This is the DRS train.
Hamilton-Rosberg has often been described as the Prost Senna of the modern era. But was it really? I'm Peter Brook, I'm joined by Nedzo's F1 Gridbox and the casual F1 fan, and you're listening to the DRS Train podcast. So yeah, today we're going to talk about, well, certainly the biggest rivalry of the 2010s that kind of gripped the middle of that decade was Hamilton and Rosberg. They have a relationship going back quite a while because they used to race together in karts. They were very close, and then their careers sort of diverged for several years, even though they were both in Formula One. And then they met when they joined Williams in 2014, and then the end result was they ended up not being friends anymore. One of them retired, one of them is still here. So yeah, we're just going to talk about this and kind of reflect on some of the tensions and famous moments of their time at Mercedes. So yeah, just off the top of your head, I suppose, what are the main things that sort of stand out for you two with this period?
Should I?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think for me, the thing that stands out is I never expected it to be this competitive, how competitive it became, because I'd seen Rosberg before that. And of course, I think he pre-2013 when Lewis came in, I thought he was a strong driver, a good pair of hands, reliable. I didn't think he could actually take it to Lewis. Again, the proof is in the pudding, as they say, because there are a lot of details that get missed when we just look at the final scores. But yes, we'll dive deeper into it because I never expected this to be a battle as much as it became.
Yeah, I'm down the same lines. I wouldn't have expected a guy who's not even at the time that Rosberg obviously became Lewis's teammate. He only had that one win in China when the car was, for some reason, because of the double DRS, the Mercedes was the best car that weekend. But otherwise, yeah, you wouldn't really expect someone who's got one Grand Prix win and, other than that, a solid midfield runner. You wouldn't expect him to instantly be able to at least compete on the same level, if not slightly better, than a guy who's won a championship and is lauded as the greatest coming of Messiah of Jesus.
Yeah, for me, mostly when he was at Williams. By this point, even though he joined a year before Lewis was, fighting for titles and then won a title at McLaren. He was at the front of the grid. Rosberg was in the midfield. Rosberg was one of the last drivers I ever expected to become champion. This obviously was years before he moved to Mercedes, and then we got the advent of the hybrid era, which just changed things completely. But even so, he a lot of things had to fall into place, and he worked incredibly hard, but he still did just about achieve it. When Lewis's titles have come rather more easily for him. But yeah, so to give some context, because they were teammates 2013 to 2016. We go back a little bit further than that. They actually were teammates in karting as well for, I think, a 3-year period, because it was in 1999 that Nico's father, Keke, himself a former champion, basically got a group of people together to build a karting team for those two. And they used this to compete in the Karting World Championship. I think around 2001 was the final year for both of them, and they both went up to single-seaters after that. So initially, they started out quite good friends as well.
I think it was, if I'm not wrong, in 1998 sorry for that. In 1998 was a time when Lewis was signed by McLaren to be the part of their junior development program, whatever it was. And during this time, if I'm not wrong, Lewis was already earmarked as someone who's probably going to make it to Formula One. There was, I don't know, it was a journalist or someone who had put some bet that Lewis is going to be a world champion. And he had done it very, very early. And he cashed out well in 2008. But there was one thing that was quite clear when it comes to Rosberg and Lewis. Lewis was always looked at, and probably was the chosen one who was destined for big things, while Rosberg was looked at as someone who is good, decent, but he's not that special as probably one of the elite talents in Formula One.
Which is interesting, really, because you would almost think it would be the other way around when you look at their backgrounds, because Lewis did not come from a racing family. He came from a family of very modest income, especially by modern standards of current drivers. Whereas Nico he had this instilled into him from the very beginning because his father was Keke, who ex-F1 driver, former champion. Statistically at the lower end with only 5 wins and 1 title, but in terms of driving ability, a very well-respected driver. So but then he was never. This had happened loads of times before, having sons following in the footsteps of their fathers. It only really worked out with Graham and Damon Hill, and then with Gilles and Jacques Villeneuve. But yeah, Lewis, everyone knew there was something special there. I mean, he got signed by McLaren very early. In 2001, he actually raced against Michael in a karting event, and he gave him a lot of praise as well. But yeah, even with that, it was interesting because once they were done as karting teammates and moved into single-seaters, things progressed faster for Rosberg because he actually got to Formula One the year before Lewis.
Yeah, I think it was probably a case of Rosberg finishing ahead of Lewis in F3. I think it was 2005, probably. No, 2004 in F3, where Rosberg was 5th in the championship and Lewis was 6th. Now, both of these drivers, now it was a case of McLaren, Mercedes managing things. McLaren was managing Lewis, while Rosberg was being managed by Mercedes at the time. And since probably Mercedes thought that Rosberg could be promoted to the next ladder, while Lewis and McLaren, probably from Martin Whitmarsh specifically, he was adamant that Lewis needed to do another season. So that's how the whole gap came of an year, because Rosberg was promoted to Formula on GP2 at the time, GP2 in 2005, while Lewis stayed back. Lewis dominated in I think it was F3 at the time, while Rosberg won GP2 title, and then Lewis progressed and did the same thing. I think that's where the gap came of an year.
Yeah, things did kind of move faster for Rosberg because the two drivers, they're a very similar age. I mean, Rosberg is maybe only a couple of months younger. But yeah, 2004, they did everything together, actually, just on different teams, because Rosberg had his own team, Team Rosberg, and then Lewis was with Manor Motorsport, who was the team that would eventually morph into Virgin and Marussia and all of that. But yeah, that year, because it was actually, Rosberg was actually 4th in Formula 3, and Lewis was 5th, but then Lewis won the Bahrain Super Prix, which is a one-off race. Rosberg was 2nd in it. They both did Macau. Lewis was 14th, Rosberg didn't finish it. And then the Masters of Formula 3, Rosberg was 6th and Lewis was 7th. But then it was off the fact that, he'd performed better because Rosberg got 3 wins in Formula 3 and Lewis got 1. And after that, they thought, okay, let's move him up a year early. Formula 3 Euro Series, Rosberg goes to GP2, wins its inaugural season and goes to F1. And then before this, actually, he tested a Formula 1 car before Lewis as well, because Rosberg tested a Williams in 2002, and at the time it made him the youngest ever person to drive a Formula 1 car. Possibly still, I don't know if actually, I think Max was younger when he tested.
Max was 16.
16, yeah. Until Max came along, he was the youngest person to ever drive a Formula 1 car because he was only 17. He drove a Williams. And then 2004, Lewis drove the McLaren MP4 16?
16.
16? The 04 car.
Wait, no, the 17D. It might have been the 17D.
Yeah. It wasn't the 18 because that's the one that exploded. The 19, the 04, basically, he drove a McLaren. So that was his first test. So Rosberg was just moving things up a bit faster. And so even though Rosberg got to Formula 1 a year before Lewis, in the end, things basically did work out far better for Lewis because he had to wait next year, but he got to go to McLaren, whereas Rosberg went to a very explosive Williams in 2006.
Not in a good way, by the way.
Yeah, more explosive when Nakajima came along.
Yes. So at this point, it was. I think people knew that they were still very good friends. Partly, probably helped by the fact that they weren't really racing one another on track very often. There's a few races where they had podiums together. I mean, they did in 2008, Australia and Singapore. They shared the podium for those races. I remember Singapore, Rosberg was quite disgruntled because he could have won that had Crashgate not happened, basically after what happened to Massa. But otherwise, yeah, Lewis, well, he fought for the title, then won it. Rosberg was just in the midfield, annihilating his teammates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another point about 2008. Remember in Australia, I think it was in the the cool down, not the cool down room, but like the box that you go into before you go onto the podium. They were celebrating with each other, and it was all, "Yeah, you've done it," and that kind of thing, and it was all really
Very,
flowery.
very, very friendly. Yeah. I mean, you could see
Yeah.
they were very close at the time.
And,
Yes.
and I think, and also because they were so early on in their careers, because by this point, I think that was Rosberg's first podium. I'm not sure if he
Yes,
got.
Yeah.
He didn't.
That was his
That's
first
it. Yeah,
podium.
he didn't get any in 2007 because his teammate Alex Wirtz got one in Canada, but that race was chaotic.
Yeah.
His first podium. Lewis. Well, for Lewis, he was used to this. I mean, he had 4 wins already from 07, lots of podiums. He just lost the title, but yeah, good start to the race. But yeah, it's still at the point where it's not really a. It was still quite a novelty to have those kind of performances.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And
Mm.
I think Lewis surprised everyone with the fact at how ready he was when he came into Formula One. I think that's what stands out. Probably, I think credit for that also goes to Ron Dennis for the way he groomed him. It makes a lot of difference because Lewis came into Formula One. He didn't really come into Formula One as a teenager as such. He was 22 at the time, 22 or 21.
Mm.
That's still and that's after tremendous kilometers that he's put in regularly day in day out in that McLaren. So when he ultimately raced, he was more or less ready, on pace, and he kind of got along with whatever new changes were there. What Rosberg, I think for Rosberg the problem was that Williams at that stage, it was not a team that it didn't have the resources that it used to in the glory days. It was not a team that was as organized as it was in the late 90s or early 90s. It was a team on the decline, and he had to rally his troops, which is probably not the best thing for a driver that is trying to, make his way in Formula One.
Mm. Yeah, we've discussed in a previous episode. We actually discussed Lewis in 2007 and everything that went into that season. If you want to see that episode, that'll be linked up here. Yeah, that one. Obviously, he was ready. I mean, it took an intense amount of preparation and testing, but he'd been groomed for this for 9 years or something before that. Whereas Rosberg, a kind of an easier time in that much less pressurizing, but difficult in that Williams were really not at their best, because Williams and McLaren, teams that before, even though McLaren were doing very well before this, had lots of success. For me, even though modern Formula One is basically dominated by Red Bull and Mercedes, I consider Ferrari, McLaren, and Williams to be like the big 3 of Formula One. The most successful ones. They've been around for the longest. They're still kicking. But Williams had been in a gradual decline since 1997 or since 1998 by this point. And they were using these questionable Toyota engines, which they were getting for free, courtesy of having Kazuki Nakajima in the car. The cars were just not very reliable. But there wasn't any indication that they'd be future teammates, nor that they'd really be fighting each other much. It looked like their careers were just going in different directions.
Yeah. I mean, it's just 2 different roads, right? Because Lewis very quickly became the top driver. Not Rosberg, on the other hand, he was not even. I don't think you'd say that he was one of the most sought after drivers in Formula One. What he was doing in Williams, it was fine. But there was always this caveat that, again, he has Kazuki Nakajima as his teammate, and how good is he? I mean, I remember in testing or probably FP1 in 2009, quite often you used to see Rosberg P1 because Williams used to get things rolling quite quickly at the start and then slowly fall away. But there was always this thing that came up that how good is Rosberg? Probably middling driver. That's how he was looked at. He was considered a bit of a tire eater at the time because his maybe race pace management was not there, or maybe it was probably Williams having that kind of an impact. And then on the other hand, Lewis was doing a completely it was a parallel universe where he was already a star. In Britain, he was probably one of the biggest things that was there at the time. He was already a world champion. McLaren was struggling in 2009, but by the end of the season, it was still the front runner, and he got a win during that season as well. So the clash was not expected, and again, what happened later is it was even a bigger surprise for me.
One point that I will mention, obviously, we're now going into Rosberg's start of his Mercedes stint, is that all of Rosberg's teammates that he went up against had some sort of caveat. Obviously, he went up against Webber in 06, but that was his rookie season. So anything that he does there is instantly going to be slightly deflated because he's a rookie and he's got to get used to it. He went up against Wirtz in 07, and again, Wirtz wasn't at that point. He wasn't really a full-time driver. He'd done a couple of, I think it was McLaren he did testing with. But that was his first full-time season. Obviously, if we get rid of Brazil because he got booted out a race early, and then he went up against Nakajima. And again, Nakajima wasn't a horrendous driver. He wasn't like a complete and utter, well, not obviously not paid driver, but a guy who was put in there because of other circumstances that weren't his driving ability. He wasn't horrendous. Like, for example, I think he had one good race in Monaco. I think that was in 08 where he got like 6th or 7th. Well, you can't finish that high at Monaco without being at least half decent. And then obviously Rosberg went up against a Michael Schumacher that had come back, which I think segues nicely into his Mercedes stint.
Yeah, the Williams teammates, I'll just reflect on those. I mean, Webber, yeah, rookie, but also Webber was there in 2006 because basically nobody wanted him, so there was nowhere else to go. It's like, well, I might as well just stay for a second year with Williams. Wirtz, yeah. I mean, Wirtz had done full-time seasons with Benetton in the past, but then he'd been testing for years with McLaren and Williams, and I think this was just like, can you please just give me a full-time seat just for once, and then I'll quit, and then I'll retire with one race remaining, which is really weird. Like, why not just do Brazil and see out the season? I don't remember there being such a car crash in China that would make him want to retire, unless he was that aggrieved by Lewis beaching his car in the gravel or something. 2008 Nakajima and 09, he was only there because they got free Toyota engines. But then he compensated for that by making them spend loads on front wings. But that 2009 especially, a very good analogy actually is, well, last year and the year before with Williams, so Albon and Sargent, because Rosberg was killing it and getting points like nearly every race. Nakajima didn't get a single point in 2009. So it's very, very similar to that. But yeah, Lewis, by this point was a superstar and everyone was obsessed with him. I remember in his autobiography, which definitely wasn't shadow written, he said that in 2007, the first 4 races or something, he'd signed for McLaren. He'd only just done GP2, so only like hardcore racing fans knew who he was. The first 4 races were like flyaway races, and so he came back because at the time he still lived in Stevenage. He came back there after 2 months, and there were like armies of photographers outside his house and everything, and he was just suddenly, everyone knew who he was, like overnight. On that point, 2010, this is where things change and go into a different gear, because with Rosberg moving to Mercedes, not only moving to Mercedes, but getting joined there by Michael, over the next couple of years, his stock soars. Whereas, if anything, Lewis's goes down because he has a few not so brilliant years with McLaren.
Yeah, I was going to say, because obviously it's a really interesting dynamic, because obviously Rosberg beat Schumacher in the points 3 years in a row, but he wasn't an absolute smattering in terms of overall performances. Michael was very unlucky at some points during those stints, and also he was obviously, we know he's arguably the greatest driver of all time, in my top 5 definitely, and apart from Niki Lauda maybe, there'd no one who'd really come back at that point in their career, and obviously he was a lot older than Lauda was when he came back. I think Michael was very underrated during his, especially during 2010 and 2012. I think he had very underrated seasons for the most part, and he had some very underrated drives as well. I remember obviously outside of those 2 seasons, they had Canada 2011 where he was running like 2nd place for a lot of the race, and it was just like, how is he up there in that car? Obviously, there were times, I think his overall peaks were actually higher than Rosberg's. He just had a bit of inconsistency that creeped in. And with Lewis, obviously, this is because I have a friend who is a massive Jenson Button supporter, and always was when he was in his career. And he pointed out that actually, over their stint at McLaren as teammates, Button scored more points than Hamilton did because of 2011.
Yeah. I won't really say it's only because of 2011. It's because I think what happened with Lewis in 2010 was he got a bit of a cultural shock when Button stepped into the team, and the first reaction was, I think it's there in, I remember stumbling across a quote from Lewis where he said that he'll see Button will end up seeing a lot of his rear wing, a lot of Lewis's rear wing, because he'll probably be behind him most of the time. And then the season begins, and I think it was the second or third race that Button won consecutively, and
Australia.
he was leading the championship. Yeah, in
Yeah.
Australia and China. These were the two races that he picked up. As soon as that happened, first of all, Lewis thought that because in both those races, it was Button making the call and winning the races. And while Lewis, on the other hand, was relying on McLaren, and the calls didn't really pan out for him as good as it probably should have. And I think that set the tone for the entire partnership, because Lewis, in terms of raw talent and pace over a lap, he had the edge on Jensen. But when it came to race management, team management, and keeping his head, I think Button had the edge when it came to those things, and that made a lot of difference. And I think that was also a factor why Lewis left McLaren in 2012, because what he realized was that fine, I might beat this guy, but he'll always be there and thereabouts. Yeah.
Yeah. I think obviously you talked about race management and keeping your head. Jensen had obviously he'd only won the title in 2009, but he'd been in F1 for 10 years by that point. He had a lot of experience. Like he's got the same amount of experience that, like, for example, I'm trying to think of a driver who debuted in 2014, Kevin Magnussen. Obviously, he missed a season or two, but Jensen had a lot of experience. And I think, people that obviously he won the title with Brawn in 2009, and I think people thought like not quite highly of him. Obviously, he's a reigning champion. You can't not think highly of a reigning champion, but he wasn't really seen as someone. He was just seen as kind of not a midfield contender, but someone who's kind of up and thereabouts. He was similar to like Nigel Mansell in his early career, because Mansell took 12, 13 seasons to win his only title. Jensen took 10. So they kind of went similar in terms of everyone knows he can do it, but he just doesn't have that. Well, for Mansell, it was just that he kept bottling it. But for Jensen, it was just people didn't think he had that raw edge of speed, because, like, although Jensen, especially after Brawn in 2009, he had about 5 billion race wins, but he hardly ever got pole positions, partly because of his driving style. It was all smoothness and tyre wear and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Jensen, up until this point, he'd spent most of his career crashing a lot and driving cars that were either illegal or just useless. And there was a lot. I think it was just symptomatic of the sort of disappointment and the kind of malaise in the British like psyche and the media with Formula One, because we had just had to go through years of Michael dominating everything, and the only notable British drivers. I mean, Irvine came close in '99, but then Coulthard, it never happened. Jensen was just middling it, and then you had like Anthony Davidson popping up sometimes. So there wasn't much in terms of British interest. And then Lewis comes in like a wrecking ball, and suddenly everyone is obsessed. But Jensen, I mean, obviously has the street cred going into 2010. He's the defending champion, but that it's such a weird year, 2009. Like, I look back at it, I'm just like, what was that? Because the cars, all these new rules. I mean, it was the same drivers and the same teams, but the cars were fuck ugly. The grid was turned back to front, and he did a more extreme version of what Red Bull are doing this year, that he dominated at the start, and then because they didn't upgrade the cars, and the cars actually got slower as the year went on because they warped and wore out because they couldn't replace any parts. He just wasn't doing anything for the second half, but had made up enough of a lead, and also banked on Vettel being useless for the first couple of races to let him take the title. But yeah, in terms of driving styles between the two, and I've said this to death with Lewis, is that he's very passive on strategy. And what we're seeing about, how Button would make the calls and Lewis wouldn't, and Lewis just relies on the team. According to Singapore this year, that's still the case. With him, even with Mercedes. But yeah, Lewis would be amazing in qualifying, and if the track was either bone dry or shitting it down. Whereas, very smooth Button, very smooth driving style, always knew how to read the changing conditions, and those were the races where he really, really excelled. And most of his wins outside of the Brawn ones came in the rain. And so I think it humbled Lewis a bit, because he had both of them were up and down in those 3 years, because they had all of their wins were done in very impressive fashion, but then they had a lot of races. Lewis had a lot of races where he was just crashing into everyone, and then Button had races where he was basically just driving an HRT.
Which race?
I think it's half of his 2012 season where he just something went wrong,
Yeah.
and the car. I mean, Lewis lapped him in Canada. 2012.
Yeah, I know. And
He had no clue.
He spent the whole of Monaco behind a Caterham and then crashed into him at the end.
Yeah,
Didn't he have problems in Valencia as well, 2012?
yeah.
He was outside the points in Valencia. Lewis crashed
think-
at the end, but he was on course for a
Yeah.
podium.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he had.
Setup
I think it was
issues.
6 or 7 race stretch where Button was nowhere, absolutely nowhere, and he just realized that the championship was gone. And then out of the blue, something happened in Germany where he, I think, got P2, and then he won the race in Spa. So yeah, I think that's the difference. Button. What after this partnership, what people realized was that okay, Button is not an Alonso or maybe a Lewis, but he's very, very good when it comes to being just a slight level below those guys. And I think he showed that.
And also far better than Kovalainen in terms of being a teammate for Lewis as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing that is good to point out is that Jensen often had these races where he was nowhere and then just came back. Like I think it was Australia 2010, his first one with McLaren. He went off into the ground because he did the strategy
Very
and
early.
he went for the wet tires and it was all the slick tires. It was the wrong time.
He ran the option tires for 52 laps in that race.
Yeah, and then he also did
won
that
it
obviously in Canada, which is the main one, which people talk about when it comes to last to first. But he was like John Watson, because John Watson had a couple of those last to first challenges, 22nd to first in Long Beach, and then he had a couple of like
17th to first in Detroit as well.
Yeah.
But he went
Yeah.
through 50 times through the pits, or what? I mean,
He
Button had.
He pitted 6 times. I think 2 of those were penalties as well.
Yeah.
He
People call that a
crashed,
best win, but
he
it
crashed out
definitely wasn't.
Lewis. I mean, he crashed into Lewis, whatever happened there. He
Yeah.
also crashed. He also beached.
He
Alonso.
took Alonso out, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in
Alonso
my
was
video
hanging
about
on the
this,
curb.
I listed this as his best race if you put your like Union Jack tinted glasses on. Because it's just the vibes that make it so amazing to come from last and to win on the last lap in those circumstances, even though he was driving like a terrorist for most of the race.
I think I can't put it as his best because he was driving like a terrorist. I'd say something like 2010 Australia, maybe even 2012 Spa or Brazil.
Yeah, but though, I mean, those races for him are completely forgettable because I mean, Spa 2012 was an amazing race, but Button you didn't see him all race. He just stormed off into the distance of Hülkenberg and didn't crash. And Spa, he did absolutely nothing. It helped that Grosjean took out everyone except Vettel at the start as well. He didn't have to do anything in those ones.
But yeah,
Even Australia, he only won that one because of Vettel's brake failure.
Yeah, but Australia 2012 was, I think, probably his best race because that was the first race of the season. McLaren had the best car.
Oh yeah.
Lewis got it on pole, Jensen right alongside him. He got the lead, and I still remember after the race when Jensen finishes first, Vettel is second, and Lewis is third. The look that Lewis had, the look of death, completely that. I have the fastest car, but I just lost out to my teammate.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of realization that Lewis had that, okay, it's not going to be easy. And when ultimately he had to make a decision, and I think many people forget, Jensen and Lewis were being paid the same amount in 2012.
That's interesting.
Same contracts. And for Lewis, who is supposedly a huge superstar in Britain, that hurt his ego as well. So, yeah, a lot of things changed for Lewis during that particular time. And I think that's why I tend to, when there are people that claim that Lewis is the best of his generation, he's better than Alonso and Vettel, I tend to take a break from that because I've seen these seasons. I've seen how much of an impact a team has.
Yeah.
Now, while Lewis might be, again, he has the records and he made the right call. If he had not done that, his career could have looked completely different because the teams play a major role. And that's, I think, what we've seen with Vettel and Alonso throughout their career.
Yeah. Okay. So, from my memory, I suppose from a British perspective, at the time they were more or less kind of equally popular. It seemed amongst the public. I mean, it was really the like British dream team to have both these British champions in their prime racing for McLaren, a British team, and everyone just loved that. And now, I hated it at the time because I was a dyed in the wool Red Bull and Vettel fan and that. But now I look back with a kind of fondness for that. But maybe it's just nostalgia for the V8 diffuser era, as I like to call
Vodafone
it.
liveries.
Yeah, something like that. But Yeah, we're talking a lot about Button in this. This is not the Jensen Button podcast, but yeah, if we shift away to what was
The
happening with
Rosberg
Rosberg,
and
yeah,
Michael thing.
if we shift away to that, so as I mentioned, Rosberg moves to Mercedes to replace Button, is joined by Schumacher, and this is a huge because it's marking the start of a new era as well as the point system and everything else that was the new regs and everything else in 2010. To see Michael return after 3 years, obviously everyone was really, really excited to see how he would do. Rosberg for him is like, well, this is my chance. This is like the ultimate test of my abilities. And it worked because he beat him pretty convincingly in those 3 years.
Yeah. I think there are a couple of things though. I think for me, the first season showed a few things. One was that Michael, in terms of hunger, was not really there. In terms of the kind of the way he was talking about things, he knew this was a long-term project. So he had the on-track performance was probably his own on-track performance was probably not at the top of his mind, but how the team was going to progress, that was something he continued to talk about, and I think that was something he had similar to. Somehow he had a similar tone to what Ross Brawn had at the time, that they knew a lot of work needed to be done, because I think people forget Honda left in 2008. When Braun was there in 2009, they had to basically downsize like anything. So the team that Mercedes got, it had operated at a shoestring budget in 2009, and things were not in place. They needed to upscale a lot to actually be competitive with the likes of Ferrari, McLaren, and co. And that's what was at the back of the mind for Michael as well. He knew that the project is going to take time, and even when it comes to his own performance, there were a couple of things that I think people forget. First is he was coming off a neck injury, something that he had actually concealed for a long time and came out later. Secondly, this was him coming back after possibly two major regulation changes that he did not have in his entire career. First was that the groove tires were gone. He had to execute an entire race on a fat tank of fuel where the tire management was going to become a much bigger factor. And the second thing was in-season testing was done. Michael made the difference in his entire career with in-season testing, and if you take one of his biggest strengths away from him, it plays a role, and I think that kind of did. But yeah, overall, I'd say Rosberg impressed in a manner that he showed that he's still good. From at least personally, I didn't really rate him as one of the top drivers even after his stint with McLaren, because there were areas where Michael would just he was just on it during a weekend and just put Rosberg in his place, and that's when the talent shines. So yeah, just I think he was good. I won't say he was an Alonso, a Lewis, or a Vettel at the time, or a Kubica at the time.
Yeah, I mean, they were going back to my points. I do think Michael's stint in Mercedes was underrated. I did a video on this because I believe it so much. But yeah, there was. I think as I said, 2010 and 2012 were the main points. Specifically 2012 because this is something I mentioned in my video again. Nice plug. But in 2012, if you took out his if you took his first 6 races without any caveats, so for example, he doesn't retire in China, let's say he goes on to win, obviously he probably would have come second, and then in Monaco he would have had a massive chance to win because how that race went, it was just a train of 5 cars, which would have been 6 with him there. If you took away all his mechanical problems and all that sort of stuff, he would have been leading the 2012 championship after Monaco. He would have been on 90 points to Alonso's 78. And obviously, considering, 2012 was a chaotic season and 7 different winners from the first 7 races and stuff like that. But even still, that Mercedes, admittedly, yes, in China it was the best car, but it was at least no better than 3rd in all the other races. To be leading the championship after Monaco does kind of prove that Michael, on his day, was top 3 drivers on the grid. Still, at the age of like 40 to 43.
So yeah, Michael was 41 when he made his comeback. At the moment,
43 when he retired. Yeah.
Yeah, 43 when he retired. Alonso is currently 43. Admittedly, Alonso, well, he did have a break, but that was for 2 years, not 3. But he's still driving as good as ever. For Michael, a lot of it was the car. I think he had lost a bit of his touch, but not a significant amount. Because when it comes to going into 2010, slick tyres are back. No, 2009 slick tyres are back. I was going to say he's the only driver who had done slicks before that, but then most of the grid had actually, because he hadn't raced on slicks since 1997, and that was without that was when they still had refueling as well. So wasn't used to running cars on heavy fuel loads on slicks. But just generally because the car was only ever fourth best most of the time, it was kind of towing the line between upper midfield and front runner. He
Basically,
had
the current day Aston Martin is what you can call it. It was not going to challenge the front. It was
it was in that kind of region. And he, the 2010 and 2011 overall were fairly good seasons. In 2011, he finished very near to Rosberg in the point standings.
Yeah, I think it wasn't much, right? 5 or 10 points.
There was very little in it, yeah. But 2012, there was quite a significant gap because as well as having reliability, the car got worse because both drivers had a run of 6 or 7 races near the end where they didn't get any points at all. And he made some big blunders in Spain and then also in Singapore. And so he was just getting tired, I think, and it just wasn't working. So everyone was very excited by this. I remember I was, because I hadn't really watched F1 during his original stint. And I know that people like Lewis and Vettel, and they were chomping at the bit. The prospect of racing against Michael was what they wanted to really do, and it just ended up being a letdown because it didn't work out. It wasn't the Michael that everyone remembered. But that works in Rosberg's favour because it meant he got to say, "Well, I beat Michael 3 years in a row."
I think the biggest problem when it comes to Michael is the worst way to look at the 2012 season for me is, again, it came out later from Ross as well, that post Barcelona when he crashed into, I think it was Bruno Senna.
Yes, it was.
He told Ross that he would not be continuing into 2013. And that's when the talks began to find a replacement for him. It was at that time when Mercedes, Niki Lauda for the first time contacted Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso. When both of them declined, they didn't really want to move to Mercedes. It was then that the talks began with Lewis. Lewis was on third on the list, and the fourth was Nico Hülkenberg. And people forget that Michael also, his level also fell a bit as the season progressed. But there was also this case of him just checking out. He knew his time was up. He didn't really have the motivation to go ahead and do the hard yards. Plus, the thing is, you have to look at one thing. 7-time world champion, 90 plus wins. There was no one even remotely close to what he had achieved in Formula 1. So there wasn't really much to look forward to. He wanted to race, he wanted to have fun. But when it comes to the hunger to win, probably the fire was maybe not there. Plus, you have to admit at 43 it becomes a bit tough. He also wanted to spend some time with the family and things like that. Something that is mentioned in his documentary too. So yeah, it made the gap look a bit bigger. But probably it was a case of Michael not giving a fuck at the end of it. And maybe to an extent, Rosberg also ramping things up.
Yeah. One point about that, because obviously I think, both of their performances did drop off towards the end of 2012, but in Brazil, when it was typical greasy, horrible, wet conditions, Michael wasn't necessarily up there right at the front, but he got it would have been sixth if he hadn't have let Vettel through, which he didn't need to do. But he was doing well in Brazil. And I don't know where Rosberg. I mean, Rosberg got a puncture that race, so maybe we don't know where he would have eventually finished. But Michael still had it. I just think that he, as you said, didn't really care. Didn't really, couldn't really be bothered.
Yeah, that was. I mean, that race was probably one of the most one-sided ones just for those two, for Rosberg and Schumacher. Because Rosberg got a puncture early on, and then had a lot of problems, and he was running near the back, battling with the HRTs and all of those. Schumacher had, compared to all the previous 6 or 7 races where they were getting knocked out, in Q1 was actually quite a good race, and a relative high to end his career on to finish 7th.
Yeah.
And that, when Rosberg gets asked about his years against him, the main thing he mentions is like how Schumacher was the king of mind games, and would often do that to try and get in his head. And it would be things like he would just sit in the toilet and until the last minute before the start of quali, just so that Rosberg had to get in there really late and stuff, and just little things like that to try and get in his head, which I have no doubts he would have done against Barrichello and the like as well. It didn't work apparently because Rosberg was still beating him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that seat opened up for Lewis, because for Lewis, going back on the McLaren side, we mentioned he was a bit disgruntled about finishing third in Australia. Then there was that botched pit stop in Bahrain. Then the crunch
So
point.
many of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and
There
then
was
the
even one Malaysia.
Malaysia as well. Yeah, and the crunch point was Spa, when he decided to tweak telemetry data because he was like, "Why the fuck is Button faster than me?" And so then soon after that comes the announcement that he's going to join Rosberg at Mercedes for 2013, and yeah, everyone was just like, "What is this?" And they were laughing at him like, "It's why are you taking this downgrade?" And clearly, Lewis knew more than everyone else did about what was coming.
I really need to go back to Facebook on my account, because I was probably one of the very few who thought that he made the right call. Because by that time, look, there were two things that I thought were never going to fail in Formula One. One was Adrian Newey, the second was Ross Brawn. And I think if we've given enough time to for Braun to do his thing, there had been 3 years where he had been working relentlessly. So I thought from 2013, maybe Lewis might not win, but in the long term, Mercedes has the money. Because if you remember, 10, 11, and to an extent in 12, there was something that was happening quite often, which was Mercedes was not putting in as much money into the project as was the case earlier. By the end of 2012, I think, Toto Wolff had joined from Williams, or he was about to. The first prerequisite that he had said was Mercedes had to invest a lot of money if they want to succeed. If that was not going to be the case, he was not going to move to the team and be a partner or whatever arrangement that has been done. And when that happened, I thought the project had a lot of, you can say, scope was there. Plus, just like right now with Aston Martin, Mercedes was building a super team. They had Jeff Willis, they had Aldo Costa, they had a ton of key people that were actually part of that squad. Bob Bell was there. And if you go back and look at the 2014 car that was built and the entire technical team, and that's basically a superstar team. Everyone is just, you knew this was going to succeed. And yet, again, maybe Lewis had this foresight or not, or he just wanted to jump the ship and see what happens. But if it was a calculated move, it went perfectly.
It's just everyone but Adrian Newey, basically, on that technical team.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking, because I think it was after 2013 when Ross Brawn left and kind of Toto Wolff took over everything. It was definitely Ross and Michael that shaped that entire project, and obviously with Ross with his technical staff did so. It's just a crazy thing, because I mean, yeah, it was just different. I was going to make a point there. I've just completely forgot what I was going to say. What was I going to say? I've just completely forgotten.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know if Lewis knew this at the time. Maybe he did. Is that the engine development had been going on since 2007 for the Mercedes hybrid power unit. So I'm sure he realized that was gonna,
he had a couple of not because we talked about pit stops and we talked about just general disgruntlement with McLaren, but he also had, obviously, I'm not sure if Singapore was the race before or the race after he announced he was not retiring. He announced he was going to Mercedes.
It was a Singapore retirement because he was leading the race and actually a Mercedes part failed. So
I think it was the gearbox that died on him.
Yeah.
I think he had 6 retirements in 2012.
Then he had Abu Dhabi as well from the lead, which was a very underrated race, actually.
So yeah, let's think. Abu Dhabi from the lead, Singapore from the lead, crashed into Huckenberg in Brazil, crashed into Maldonado in Valencia,
crashed into Grosjean and Spa.
Yep, Spa. There was another one earlier on, I think.
Right. Was it Malaysia?
No, not Malaysia.
Bahrain?
No, he finished in Bahrain, just low down, like 8th or 9th.
He had a career where he had the AstroTurf go on his car and he finished 10th.
God, I know this season inside out. I should really know this. He won Canada.
It wasn't India, was it?
No, he finished
I'm sure
Fourth
there's. I'm
in
sure
India.
there's sick. I'm sure there are sick. Ugh.
Wikipedia.
Why aren't I using that? I've got Wikipedia open. Okay. He has in 2012. Okay, yeah. Valencia, Germany. Puncture in Germany. Yeah, that's it. Valencia, Germany, Spa, Singapore, Abu Dhabi, Brazil, and 3 of those
all
are
in
from
the
pole.
second half of the season.
Yeah, and 3 of those are from pole. So yeah, what wasn't a good time. Wasn't a good time for him. But I suppose now, well, almost an hour in, we're kind of getting into the bread and butter really of this. If we move to 2013, so Mercedes built a car that was, aside from getting rid of the step nose, was effectively the same car. A lot of people, because there were almost no technical changes in 2013, had cars that looked almost identical to the year before. The one major thing that did change was the tires, which were now made of cheese, and this. Really, nowhere was this more the case than with Mercedes, because Hamilton and Rosberg were dominating qualifying, but then the car would just completely collapse in the races. And there were races where they started on pole and got lapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was
blowout.
first lap. Which race was it? I think it was either Barcelona or Bahrain where this happened instantly. I think it was first lap, Rosberg was in the lead, and then by the end of it, he was getting lapped.
In Bahrain, he started on pole. He finished 9th. I think he was down to 5th or 6th by the end of the first lap. The same thing happened in Spain. In Spain, he started on pole and finished 6th. And then, curiously enough, it was about 3 days after Spain that they had their secret tire test, and then they locked out the front row in Monaco and got a 1-2.
Yeah.
That was
interesting,
funny.
isn't it?
Yeah.
By the way, before we go ahead, do you think Lewis and Rosberg were willing accomplices of what happened?
No, it would have been the team. I think. I think it's similar with
Yeah,
Alonso.
no, as in it was the team, but were they willing accomplices in something that they knew was going to be incorrect? I mean, it was illegal. Everyone knew it, and Rosberg, being an idiot, actually spoke about it at Monaco, and that's how the whole thing came out.
I guess it depends how much they understand, how deep they'd looked into regulations around that stuff. Because I guess you would have faith that the team knows what they're doing, and this is.
Yeah. I think
we've got the permission to do all of this,
and ask them to wear camouflage black helmets, not their usual ones.
That's a good point. I think Nico might have caught on because he's got an aura of kind of intelligence about him, into like academic intelligence.
Well, I mean, he's one of the most well-educated drivers in Formula One ever.
Languages and stuff.
Yeah, doesn't he have an engineering degree as well? Or something? He really knows his stuff. He's a very well-educated guy, Nico.
Well, Lewis is kind of just drive the car and know a little bit about setups.
Yeah. Maybe I suppose that would have been suspicious, because the other thing is like, how exactly do you plan to do this in secret? Because this is on the outskirts of Barcelona. It's surrounded by suburbs and everything. And again, this is the V8 era. You can hear those cars from miles away. If it was the hybrids, it's like, maybe nobody will notice, but people are going to see. And also, I think all the other teams cottoned on, because when they were packing up to leave, it's like all the Mercedes stuff is still here.
Yeah.
It's that was a shady one as well, because they didn't even know what compounds they were running and that sort of thing.
They only got a small punishment as well. It was like, Sam Bird driving the young driver test, like, Diddums.
Yeah, and it's like, this is something where, other than Monaco, it didn't really help them that much for the rest of the season, because they still had the problems of, well, actually, from Monaco onwards, there were no more.
They won the race in Silverstone. They won the race in Hungary as well. And it was then that Horner remarked that if you're telling me that the entire test didn't help, the 3 of the last 4 races were won by Mercedes. So.
And then the FI were like, let's bring back the 2012 compounds, and then Vettel wins all the remaining races. Yeah. I think if it did give them a specific advantage, it was probably maybe because no one really knows what compounds those were. Maybe those are 2014 compounds, and they were thinking about that. I don't know.
The thing is, we don't know anything because it's not televised, it's not regulated. Nothing. No, we don't know anything about what happened in that Pirelli test, other than the fact that as a result, Mercedes was able to handle its tire much better than the way it did. And by the end of the season, the team finished second in the championship, behind only Red Bull. So it did something.
But
anyways, moving to the whole. For me, the biggest surprise in 2013 was there were 2. First was the slight lack of adaptability that Hamilton talked a lot about. He had the main issue that he specifically pointed to was him struggling with the braking. He had probably the Brembo brakes in McLaren and he moved to Mercedes. They were different ones. And that was where he continued to complain that that was one area where Rosberg was quicker than him. And if you look back in 2013, it was probably, again, people think that 14, 15, 16 is where the two were very competitive. It was 2013 where Rosberg had multiple races where he was consistently the faster Mercedes driver. A lot more than compared to what happened in 14 or 15 or even 16.
Yeah, he won 2 races compared to Hamilton's one. He won Monaco and can't fucking remember the other one.
Silverstone.
Yeah,
and
courtesy of Vettel's gearbox.
And then Lewis won in Hungary, obviously, which was his go-to track to win a race at. But I think Rosberg was just slightly better in 2013, just edging him out because he had the experience at the team and all that sort of stuff.
And there were a lot of races where he did quite well. I mean, even in Singapore, he was second in the race, and the thing was, slowly you could see a pattern where Rosberg was just like in 2011, where Button was the driver who was second to Vettel a lot of times. You saw in 2013 that Rosberg was becoming the driver who was second to Vettel a lot of times in 2013. And going into 2014 again, everyone expected one simple thing, and which was going to be that Lewis, once he gets used, because he spent the entire 2013 complaining about the Brembo brakes, and as soon as he was going to move to 2014, he would be able to adapt to it better. The cars will be different and stuff like that. So yeah, that was kind of how, in my view, again, a lot of people have different opinions about how the whole partnership happened in the turbo hybrid era. I'd still say that the 2013 season was the one where Rosberg was probably the most competitive against Lewis compared to the turbo hybrid times. They actually fought for the title.
There was a lot less at stake because they weren't.
That's true.
I suppose at first, when you look at qualifying, you think, "Oh, we can fight for this title," but then it became clear that no one's fighting for this title except Vettel. But yeah, it was just having to. It was obviously a frustrating season because they were having so many races where they were just completely collapsing, and yeah, they were pretty evenly matched. I mean, in the end, Lewis beat Rosberg by 18 points. They ended up sandwiching Kimi, who probably would have finished ahead of Lewis had he not had to miss the final 2 races. But yeah, Lewis got 5 podiums and Rosberg got 4. But then Rosberg had 2 retirements, 3 retirements actually, or three non-finishes, and Lewis had 1, which was a puncture. So yeah, Rosberg got the short end of the stick on reliability again. So yeah, it was maybe Rosberg did kind of just about have the edge, but that's kind of home advantage, if you will. Yeah. Now, yeah, things changed completely in 2014, and this is where things really kind of get kicked into gear with those two, because now, yeah, it's worth that 7 years of development has paid off because the car is insanely fast. You can see they're trying to hide it. And then we get to the final stint in Bahrain, and they're 3 seconds a lap faster than the rest of the field whilst battling each other. And it's like, okay, this is the real deal now.
This is utter nonsense. I mean, it was 5 or 6 laps, and they had a 20-second gap to P3, which was Hulkenberg at the time. Yeah,
a Force India or something. Yeah, with the same engine as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're pulling out that kind of gap, but again, it slowly came. A lot of things came out when. Even, at the time it didn't make sense, but there are things that actually come out when it comes to Mercedes, the way they actually handled the power units, the way the tuning and everything worked, because they were very complex things at the start of 2014. And how they actually distributed the power units is A1 went to the lead driver in Mercedes, A2 went to the second one, and then you had slightly lower categories in terms of iteration or how the output is, and they had Williams at the top, then they had McLaren, then they had Force India. That's how the power units went, and that's why the outputs were supposedly different. That's why you could see the difference even getting more magnified as the season went.
I think the biggest example of the power, because there were definitely discrepancies. This is going into 2015, but Grosjean, when he got his P3 at Spa, there were rumours that Mercedes had whacked up his engine and said, challenge Vettel and see if he can force him into a mistake. Obviously, he got a puncture. And that kind of proved that they had a lot more access to power than the other guys. So maybe you could say that maybe they lost the Force Indias, for example, were losing up to a second in terms of power, but to lose 3 seconds over a lap, there's clearly a discrepancy.
It's yeah, I mean that season there were kind of a couple of main points of tension in terms of the relationship, because they got 1-2s in almost every race that they finished together. I mean, the only races that both of them finished where they didn't get a 1-2 was Germany and Hungary and Abu Dhabi, but then that was only because Rosberg's car wasn't working. Everywhere else they just had it down. But yeah, the major points that the races that come to light for most people with those two: Bahrain for the duel in the desert, obviously where is it? Spa, where they collided on the
Monaco and then
second lap. Oh, Monaco, of course, qualifying when Rosberg did a Schumacher.
You could also talk about the Canada capitulation, where they both had some sort of issues. It was it brake issues they had?
Both of them. Lewis's brakes died, but then Rosberg lost his MGUK or MGUH, whichever one it was. So he had no power. That was why Ricciardo beat him. So that was just they had a few. I mean, everyone that year had teething issues. I mean, the beginning of the year was an absolute travesty in terms of pre-season testing and the very first race. Like, the cars barely made it to the start line in that. Lewis
didn't. Vettel didn't even make it, right? In the first.
No, he did start the race, but him and Lewis retired within the first 3 laps with their engines just dying on them. And then Canada again, it happened again in Canada that both Rosberg and Hamilton had problems. I think Rosberg had a gearbox problem in Silverstone that he retired from. He was on pole. Then there was the Spa puncture. Then Rosberg's car dies again in Singapore, and then it dies again in Abu Dhabi. So yeah, Rosberg once again getting the main brunt of the reliability problems.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem I felt for Lewis was throughout the entire rivalry, even 14 primarily, the man believed too much in conspiracy theories. He first pointed out the fact that I'm not a German, when I think it was in Germany where he had the power unit issue. And he was very quick to point out that, look, I'm not a German. It's a German team with a German driver. And that's how that's the chemical setup with which he's built, that he continues to question things which probably didn't need to be questioned. Because as you said, later in the season, Rosberg also bore the brunt of reliability issues. But it should have been an easy championship for Lewis if we sit down and look at every race that the two drive. I mean, Peter, you have it in front of you. The number of races where Rosberg beat Lewis in terms of performance. How many are they in 14? 3, 4.
Well, Monaco, if that counts. He beat him in Austria.
Yeah.
He beat him in Germany.
That's not because of performance, because Lewis started from the back of the grid.
Oh, of course, because he crashed in qualifying. Yeah, Lewis finished third and Rosberg won. He beat him in Brazil in 2014. Yeah. That was that a wet race? I think that was
No. It was dry.
That was dry. But yeah, I think so. 2 races at the most. I mean, maybe he'd have beat him in Australia too if Lewis had finished. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's the problem. There's too many retirements to really decide.
The point is at best 3 or 4 races out of the entire season, which had 20 races, something like that.
2021.
Yeah, so
19 races actually. Yeah,
19 races, out of which only 4 races you can categorically claim that Rosberg beat him handily. So the point is, it was half of the season was Lewis imploding himself, making mistakes here and there, and just continuing to bring Rosberg back into the title fight. And why most of it was him playing things in his own head. And I think after 16, when Rosberg finally retired, Lewis understood one thing, that if it was not going to be an Alonso or a Vettel that is fighting for the title, he can operate at 90% and beat most of the guys. That's how he kind of beat Bottas in 19, in 20, before Verstappen came along.
Can I just ask how many points did Lewis beat Nico by in the end in 2014? Obviously, given the double points finale in Abu Dhabi.
Including double points, 67.
Okay,
But
without that, it would be 42.
42 points.
Yeah.
But then if you think going into Brazil, that becomes a 17-point gap.
Yeah.
So that's still relative. I mean, obviously quite comfortable for Lewis, but in the grand scheme of things, relatively narrow. When you consider how many that Lewis has won at this point, he's already won 10 races, and Rosberg has won 5.
That's a big difference.
Another point of tension I forgot to mention was Hungary, because that one was funny because of the way the safety cars fell. Is that Lewis, because of an engine change, he had to start at the back, whereas Rosberg was on pole. But then Lewis ended up beating Rosberg. He was on a different strategy. I think he was doing a one stop to Rosberg's 2. But there was that point where they ordered him to let Rosberg through, and he just said, "Well, no, if he's faster, he can pass me, but otherwise, I'm not letting him through."
Yeah, I think the problem was Rosberg being a bit too much of a pliant team player. That hurt him here because remember in 2016 Monaco, Rosberg let Lewis through, and Lewis ended up winning and completely flipped the championship on its head. And that's the kind of things. And I think after the duel in the desert, Bahrain, I think I kind of knew, and I think even Rosberg got the hint that when it comes to the line and it's a direct battle between the two, Lewis is going to prevail almost every time. Because it was the same thing that Rosberg did. He continued to try to outbreak him around the outside, and Lewis would just push him off the track. But yeah.
One point I've just realised, because I sent in my statistics for the seasons. Obviously, we talked about how Hamilton beat Rosberg more often than not, but interestingly, during 2014, the gap between them was only 2.5 seconds in Lewis's favour on average throughout the season. So it proved that while he may have beaten him more often than not, it wasn't exactly a trouncing in that sense. And when he did lose, it was a case of he was quite close behind, and Lewis just made mistakes several times.
I mean, yeah, qualifying was interesting as well because Lewis got 7 pole positions, Rosberg got 11, and the only other pole position was Massa in Austria.
Yeah. On average, Rosberg was 2 tenths behind Lewis in quali. I don't know how that works out.
But got more. I mean, some of those races
Probably
again were ones where
yeah.
Lewis, like Germany, he crashed in qualifying. Hungary, there was the engine change. Monaco, Rosberg cheated. Stuff like that. Kind of. But this is a thing between them is that generally, even though Lewis was usually better in races, things on qualifying were so marginal between them throughout their entire stint as teammates.
Yeah, I think he outqualified Lewis overall that season.
Yeah, 11-7, and in the qualifying championship, which I did a video on, he beat him quite comfortably as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so it meant that season, I mean, was just. I remember 2013 after Multi 21, I was feeling like things are just. I can tell everyone's getting a bit tired, and Formula One is getting it needs a reset, and things need to change because we're just going to see Red Bull, like Vettel, continue to dominate.
I think the biggest reason why Vettel actually got booed throughout the time was because the sport had more Hamilton and Vettel Alonso fans, and they were just tired of this third guy winning almost every year. So
yeah, because that's the thing. Even in Germany, he's not particularly popular. Certainly not compared to Michael. He never garnered the same level of home support, and everyone in Britain hated him. I mean, he was treated in exactly the same fashion that Max is treated today. And the thing they have in common is Red Bull drivers that beat Lewis.
Yeah.
And that's
Go figure.
Yeah. But yeah, so 2014 is that Mercedes are dominating now. It's 1-0. Well, actually, it's 2-0 to Hamilton if you include 2013 as well. And Lewis gets his second title, first one in 6 years. And we just think, well, 2015 is going to be a similar thing. But the point with 2014 that we need a reset is that we got the reset, but God, it was a miserable season. Like, the cars were fuck ugly. They sounded fuck ugly. A lot of them didn't work. Bianchi had his eventually fatal accident. The racing was just not... We'd gone from one team dominating to another team dominating even harder.
There were only a couple of classic races like Bahrain, Hungary. That's about it.
Yeah, and then then 2015 just goes hold
Basically,
my
every
beer.
time Mercedes didn't win. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this somewhat unpopular opinion? Jenson Button in place of Nico Rosberg. If he's in the Mercedes, he beats Lewis in 2014.
I can see that.
Maybe. I mean, he'd be a bit less erratic, but it's hard to say how that car would have worked for him necessarily, because again, we say he excels in kind of marginal, changeable conditions, and he's
The car was fucking fast. That was more than a second. The thing that works against Button throughout his career. I'll just lay it out for you guys. What is the biggest weakness for Jenson Button? It's qualifying. That Mercedes was a second a lap faster than any other car on the entire grid. So the worst case, on a worst day for Button, he would still be starting on the front row. And what is one area where Button excelled over Lewis, as we've seen in McLaren? It's the ability to read a race and execute it as well as possible. And most importantly, get the team around him. If he's in the car,
Button would have won Hungary, although ironically enough, that's one of the few wet races where he really threw it, because he, in the first safety car, which was the one that gave the lead to Ricciardo, Button didn't pit. And so at the safety car restart, he took the lead, but then had to pit again a lap later. He did a Lewis 21 because he stayed out on intermediates where the rest are on slicks, and up until then he was up at the front. There weren't many.
Japan 14, right? I think it was both him and Magnussen that came into the pits at the end of the first lap and pitted for intense.
Yeah,
and he was leading the race.
That's the thing. He could. So the wet races was only Hungary and Japan. He could have won those maybe.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, because that's the kind of car you look at and you think it's one that probably needs to be driven aggressively, and it suits Hamilton to a T. In that sense. Yeah. But in general, his Mercedes, his own year in 2014 was a reasonably good one, considering that McLaren was not brilliant.
Savage.
I mean, it wasn't exactly the GP2 engine car they had the following year, but still. But
started well and then ended shit, that McLaren did, because he got a double podium in Australia.
Yeah, and Magnussen was like, "I'm going to fight for the championship," and finishes 11th in the standings. Yeah. So 2014 happens, and then we get 2015, and this is one of the most forgettable seasons in living memory. It was just miserable. The cars were not that different, but Mercedes were dominating.
I'd say it was more bearable than 14, to be honest.
It was more variable, but just more forgettable. Because Ferrari were definitely closer. I mean, Vettel had an absolutely sublime year. Yeah.
Do you remember?
I think that win in. I think I might be one of the very. Yeah, I was probably one of the people in the crowd that actually believed after Malaysia that this Vettel Ferrari thing might actually work out.
I mean,
because of the way they won.
That was the first time Mercedes had been beaten without their cars either breaking down or just funny weather conditions. Admittedly, the safety car worked well, but then Ferrari, for the first time ever, played the strategy right, and it worked. Even though Vettel was on older tyres, and he somehow kept them behind.
Yeah. It was entirely down to him. But yeah. I think people forget one thing, by the way. Lewis Hamilton did not win the title against Nico Rosberg. He won the title against Sebastian Vettel in 2015.
Yeah, it was
in Austin. Vettel was second in the championship. It wasn't Rosberg, which was 4 races before the end.
Yeah.
So that should tell you everything about 2015.
Yeah, but there were a couple of special moments. I mean, obviously there was Australia, first race of the season. They had worse reliability than they did in 2014. Like, literally, there was 15 cars starting, and then only I'm not sure if it was it did only 10 or 11 finish in the end.
11, and it was Jenson Button that finished last. That Australia 2015, that was one of the worst weekends in modern Formula One history, because most of that weekend was taken up by
It was 5th in the Sauber.
Yeah, the Sauber lawsuit was taking up a lot of that weekend, and then we had a bunch of drivers. The Manners turned up but didn't qualify, And then
I
wasn't
remember
it Magnussen was brought in as to replace Alonso
But
because
I don't think
he was
played it.
injured, and then his car died before the start. Kvyat and Bottas crashed in quali, I think, and couldn't start.
Had an
Brook
injury.
is back.
Had an injury,
Yeah.
and then Kvyat's car died on the way to the grid. So then we had 15 cars start and only 11 finish. I mean, it's just hilarious to me that Jensen 10 points for 10 and it's 11 that finishes, and he's the only one that doesn't get any points. I think that's the one where in the press conference afterwards, like Rosberg was like, well, I hope the others catch up to us, and Vettel was like, be honest, do you actually want that? You just won by 30 seconds. Do you really want us to be pushing you all the way? And then he was like, oh, well, why don't you just let us have a look under your car, see what's going on, maybe we can we'll catch up.
I will say, as much as I do bash on Lewis a lot, 2015 was his best season in my opinion. People talk about 2020 and all these other seasons, but I think 2015 was his best season. There was very few mistakes. He won the championship with 3 races to go, which is something he's hardly ever done, even in his dominant stints. And he did it in 2017 from what I remember, but he was surprisingly really good that year throughout and didn't really make any unforced errors.
Yeah,
Basically, the 2015 season was what the entire Rosberg-Lewis partnership was supposed to be. That's what it was supposed to be. But it was again Lewis losing his head and continuing to allow. And I think, and you hit the nail on the head. The 2015 season was perfect for Lewis. It was this season after Austin where you kind of saw Lewis almost taking it easy.
Yeah.
He almost thought that he had Rosberg in his back pocket, and he took the foot off the pedal, and then you had Rosberg win the last 4 races. From that point onwards, he gave Rosberg the momentum, and then it carried on into 2016.
That's a good point.
It's I mean, this season again, not the most memorable season. The only race that I actually remember particularly well is Hungary, because I mean that one before it, Bianchi had just died. And I think that threw all the drivers off because the race was just a complete, it was like a demolition derby. Like, everyone was all over the place. I think Hamilton and Rosberg afterwards were like, yeah, sorry to everyone that we were just so shit as well, because they finished 6th and 8th in that. Vettel won it. Yeah. But there was some, I mean, in terms of notable races, as you mentioned, Malaysia, Vettel beats them outright.
Hungary,
was as we said, it was a train wreck. Actually, Spain and Monaco. Okay, so Spain, Rosberg beat Lewis outright. He actually took the lead at the start and beat him. Monaco, that was the one where Hamilton got screwed over by a pit stop and lost the win. So Rosberg, he won. I mean, to Rosberg, he won Monaco 3 years in a row, and I'm not sure if anyone else has done that except Senna. Maybe that's quite rare. Or Graham Hill, it's quite rare to win 3 consecutive Monaco Grand Prix.
And I still remember that post-race scrum in Monaco where all 3 are standing and Rosberg is not celebrating that effusively because he thinks he's won the race because of the whole team strategy thing. Lewis is upset and Vettel is happy. And, and by the time the whole scrum ends, Vettel comes in and says, I'm the one who's at least happy here. And something on those lines.
Vettel was just loving life in 2015. He was just on a roll that year until, I mean, near the end it was garbage, but he was just having so much fun being at Ferrari and having a reasonably good car and just kind of
I think
annoying Mercedes at different points.
The point was people don't know that in 2014 by the first 3 or 4 races Vettel had checked out in 2014 because he had been complaining about those power units even before they came into existence in 14. In 2013, multiple times it said they sound like a hairdryer, they sound like a moped. These are not how the power units are supposed to be. He almost wanted to retire in 2014. People don't know that. And the biggest thing, post Barcelona, Vettel actually conducted an entire karting tournament to actually regain some love for the sport. These are all the things that are happening in the background and no one really knows about it. But they all read the final stat of Ricciardo outscoring Vettel and just jump to conclusions without knowing what happens in the background.
Yeah.
Apparently, Nedzo, your microphone is very quiet. You sound
because I initially didn't put my microphone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because you sound the same as you did before.
Yeah.
But I really, really wanted to do something like that. The bad lip readings and stuff. Another one I wanted to do. which I imagine would give Con a seizure, was I was going to take famous Murray Walker commentary moments and just do them in German, and just be like,
Oh,
"Here's
God.
Murray Walker in German," and all of that kind of
Well, his
thing.
Murrayisms. You because it's problem is with translating between languages is idioms and stuff. They don't really translate well.
Yeah, idioms don't work.
Yeah.
And also him just getting his words completely wrong in a lot of places. as
You
well.
can't put mill.
I mean, it happens with Croft as well, right?
And
When it comes to, he'll call Norris Oscar, he'll call Max Checo a lot of times during the race.
He famously called what was Montemini and Delatraz. He got mixed up with the weaving thing.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
doing?
Yeah.
I would like to I would like to dub races with my own commentary because I do league racing commentary and I think I'm quite good at it. So,
But yeah, I wanted to try all those things that I would love to try but can't because of fucking copyright. I feel like WEC wouldn't give a shit if you did that, but yeah,
because 4 people watch it every week.
Yeah, and IndyCar, I don't think IndyCar would have an issue with that, but it's just,
everyone will, despite getting
IndyCar
F1, IndyCar love him.
Yeah, that's my point. It's like,
They
why
do.
can't? What? Yeah, they actually because they know it's pro because he's the only like big IndyCar channel.
Yeah,
I'm guessing because the same Formula Jonah, he's the main one for WEC.
I want to do NASCAR. I want to do NASCAR, but no one because it's F1 grid box. No one's going to follow. No one's going to watch NASCAR.
Yeah, it would be funny to have you like this like sport for rednecks and hillbillies from a British perspective would be quite.
I do the race reports. I'm not sure if Ciaron's seen any of my race reports that I've put up.
Where have you done that?
Vavel.
What's that?
It's a platform for students. I might not have sent you any, but I'll send you some.
Yeah.
Mine got on the top. But mine was like the first thing you saw on the sports page for Vavel. For a day, I was so fucking pleased.
Is it? I didn't know.
Let me just put a link in producer notes. Control C, back in here. Control V. There we go.
Wow. Oh, Ricky. So it's NASCAR, right? Ricky's Stenhouse.
I came up with that fucking tagline. Stenhouse is in the house. That's fucking legendary.
This is all staying in the episode. Okay.
Yeah,
where were we?
We were middle of 2015.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me think. 2015. Yeah. So, other notable races because we mentioned some of the ones at the beginning. We mentioned Hungary, Malaysia, Austria. Rosberg beat Lewis from pole. Pretty convincing victory for him. Monza, Rosberg had a mechanical failure right from the end, which took second away from him.
Was that the race where he kept locking up at turn 1, or was that 2014?
Probably 20. Okay, yeah, but yeah. So that one, that was a second place that got taken away and went to Seb. Singapore, Lewis had his only mechanical failure of the season, but then Rosberg didn't capitalize, and Vettel won the race from pole.
Oh yeah, that was when the fucking guy walked across the track.
Oh yeah, and when normally it's a giant bloody monitor lizard or something. I loved that with the giving the lizard, sector times when it was being chased. Yeah. It's going like this down the track. That was a pretty small one. It was the one a few years ago, and there was like dinosaur or whatever that was on. It was like I was like this massive. Long. Yeah. I was like,
and the thing is, they are protected species, and in Singapore you can see them all over the place, and you can't do anything unless if you end up hurting them in some way, you're going to jail.
It's probably a stupid question. I'm guessing there aren't any Komodo dragons in Singapore.
Might be
the name. I mean, since the name, as far as I know, they're called that because they live somewhere called Komodo. But yeah, one of those. You're not getting the marshals to deal with a Komodo dragon. Get that off the track anytime soon. No,
no,
I think I'll eat you alive.
That's not happening.
You'll get bitten once and then die a slow and painful death from the venom
or something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, we're not here to talk about reptiles. So Singapore, Lewis engine dies. Rosberg is fourth. Maybe he was just useless. I don't know. But yeah, Vettel won another absolutely supreme drive from the line of Singapore. Russia, Rosberg retired from pole. He was leading the race, and the engine dies, and Lewis gets a win. That was where at that point it was like, this championship is done. Yeah. There's no coming back from that. And then Hamilton. But then wasn't it? I think it was this one. Rosberg got pole in Kota, and is that the one where Hamilton pushed him off at the start?
Yeah.
and
Yes.
didn't
I
get
mean, it happened
penalized.
multiple times. It happened in Suzuka as well, and in a couple of other races
Mhm.
where basically Hamilton did to Rosberg what Max did to Hamilton in 2021,
To
and
be
Hamilton
Yeah.
fair,
complained a lot.
I think they were, but I think even Kocha, I think was borderline. People seem to have this
It's
idea.
fine. I don't.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's fine. There's
Yeah.
that's racing, but the problem is when Lewis comes up and complains.
Yeah, because
That's
he's
when
a
it
Yeah.
becomes an issue.
For
hypocritical
me,
twat.
to be honest, if I don't really care, I think you should be able to do whatever you like. If you're not making contact,
Yeah.
everyone's like, "Oh, he pushed me off the track." It's like, yeah, he didn't touch you. You could have braked or done something differently. If there's no contact, just let them do whatever they want. Like
I
other than
think they should-
other than obviously cutting corners or whatever. I guess.
I think they should make the cars more durable and make it like NASCAR. You push me off, I'll push you off. That'll be hilarious.
Yeah, I mean,
I
there
hate
was
that,
there was a
honestly.
clip. I think it was from Euro NASCAR. I think it was at Zolder, and it was being shared recently. And someone was like, "The European mind cannot comprehend this." And it's these two guys fighting for the lead. Every single corner, there's massive track limits, and they're banging into each other and going out all over the place. There's no
It's
penalties,
great.
and it's like this is amazing. Like,
NASCAR
what-
is great. It's so different from any other series, and
It's
that's
basically
why
Massa versus Kubica. Which was it?
2007 Fuji.
Fiji 2007.
Oh yeah. But it's just, but these days it's like, oh, you dented my front upright, so here's a 2-season ban. Like it's just oh.
I mean, I don't get it. That's that's what made 2021 amazing because there was this thing called let them race. At
Yes.
least they let them race to a certain extent. Now it's a bit like don't speak this way, don't do this thing, don't touch each other. Are we back to school right now?
I'm really not a fan as well. I get that it's often for safety reasons. This whole, you're allowed to make one defensive maneuver and that's it, and there's no moving in the braking zone because it makes everything feel so choreographed.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, why can't you drive like it's Gran Turismo or you're in a gamer lobby where you just do whatever you can to stop them passing you, which is what like Senna was doing to Mansell in Monaco '92.
Yeah.
It's like because it makes it feel like you're watching like the WWE of motorsport.
Yeah.
Where
I think the reason is it becomes, and I think I've experienced it as well in racing. If there are two cars at very very you can say fast speed or something, when it comes to change in directions when in the braking zone, it becomes the margin for error is very very small, and if you have any erratic movements, you're going to have a crash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Kimi versus Max in 2016 or 17 where Max moved under braking at Spa, and that was one of the biggest examples of it because if Kimi was not even slightly more careful, that was it. That would have been a
I think it
major
was
crash.
Malaysia 2015, Max's second race down the main straight. He's going like this the entire way with someone behind him. It's just when we've had recently cases of people being under investigation or whatever because they moved more than once in the braking zone. It's like if they didn't crash,
Yeah, exactly.
let them. It's fine. No one crashed. No one died. It's fine. Let them carry on. I mean, the older drivers complain because they've had. I mean, Jody Scheckter's been asked about this before and saying that like, yeah, I think it's bullshit that you're just getting penalised for everything. And it's like, okay, fair enough, you're completely cutting corners because even in my day they wouldn't let you do that. But it's like you have the tiniest bit of contact and they're like, no, we have to penalise you.
We just need to make the cars more durable. Just do a Top Gear, make the cars out of steel, stainless steel.
They're just too, they do. I mean,
They're
this
not
is the amazing thing is that carbon fiber is supposed to be this incredibly strong, incredibly light material, but the cars they shatter like glass at the slightest
Because they'll make it
contact.
really
The reason behind that is in that case the impact does not transfer to the driver.
Yeah.
That's the main reason. If you
Yeah,
have cars built of steel, the drivers they'll have to bear the entire impact. What happens is they break.
I understand that that's the reason. That's why they have the crumple zones. But it's like the car. Surely the car should be a little bit more robust.
I mean Hamilton's car is already too robust. I mean,
Hamilton's car.
that.
I mean his car never breaks.
I think the only problem with
it gets faster after he crashes into people.
the only problem with making cars more robust is they then weigh more because you'd need extra supports and stuff like that.
Well, all the more reason to scrap the hybrids. Save 200 kilos and those. Make the cars less enormous.
That'll make things a lot more easier. Seriously.
I mean, the turbo cars in the 80s weighed about 600 kilograms.
When I started watching F1 in 2012, the weight limit was 595 kilograms. Now it's about 750. It's nuts.
Yeah, And
Or
they are. I mean,
1798.
when you see them, because I mean, I don't know if
It's 804, right?
Nedzo,
Like
did you go to the F1 exhibition in the end?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. The modern cars are fucking enormous when you
Yeah,
see
yeah.
them.
I literally said, because I was there with my mum. I literally said, I stood next to Phil Hill's 61 winning car. I was like, I could probably lay down and be about the same length as it.
Yeah, and even the 99 McLaren, I was like, this is a pretty tight package. And then you go around the corner and there's Max's car from 21, and it's like a bloody bus.
It's like you got to do a marathon to get around it.
I mean, the wheels, the front tires are bigger than the rear tires they had in the 70s and 80s when they had these giant things on them. Like the whole, it's just so long as well.
Yeah, and that's why these drivers when they're exhausted after the race, it happened in Singapore. That was one of the reasons, because these fat pigs have to be moved around in completely humid conditions of Singapore, and having very shit low speed efficiency.
I think they should just get rid of it. I think they should make the wheelbase so much shorter, because not only would it make the cars not on rails, it make them lighter.
Yeah,
I think they're doing that, but they're doing that very slowly. There's around, I think, 10 mm or something, that's 10 centimeters.
Just put us in charge of the FIA.
I mean, the thing is,
the
front of the cars have gotten a lot longer as well, and it's been that way for a long time, because they realize actually maybe we should put the steering mechanism in front of the driver's feet when there's an accident. Maybe that's a good idea. But the front of the cars and it's like there's less stuff going on at the front to need that to get so much longer than it was 15 years ago, because I understand the engines are enormous, and then you have to fit the gearbox in amongst the turbos and all the batteries, which are taking up a lot of space. And 2010 was the big change, because the fuel tanks had to be quite a bit larger, because they had to run the whole race unless you were Virgin. But they just now, why can't just get them back to 04, 05 sizes when the cars looked better and sounded better and drove better?
And I think we could bring back refueling as well to make the cars lighter.
I know. Well, I would love that. I get people say, "Oh, well, then you might, spray the car." And
variables would be.
But
I don't really agree with the whole thing that the safety would get compromised, because
it wouldn't.
It's Formula One.
Fine.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is that there's even go to like a normal petrol station for normal cars, and the whole idea is that you can't use it if it's not plugged, or it switches on when you take it out, and then it stops when the thing is filled up.
Yeah,
you need a basic fail-safe that maybe there's a clip system so that the
plus the thing is it's actually insulting
when it's actually plugged in.
Yeah, plus it's actually very insulting to Formula One to actually assume that F1 teams cannot come up with a solution where things are safe. Yeah, that's the kind of assumption we're making, which is foolish. Foolish.
Refueling should completely come back. If they bring back refueling, what they have to then not do is also bring back that rule that you start qualifying on race fuel, because that stupidity that destroyed the tension, because he got poles and he's running light and he'll pit early tomorrow.
Alonso in Hungary 2009 getting pole in a shite box Renault.
It was those little things. It was that rule that you had to start the race on the tyres you qualified on, that we had for years before getting rid of that. It's like, why are you doing this to us? Can you just let them run as fast as possible in qualifying? And then
it's because they want to add artificial kind of strategy, kind of
remember there was also this thing of burning off fuel for no fucking reason whatsoever. In 2006, 2007.
In qualifying,
that's basically wasting fuel. We are burning fuel.
Yeah, and cars that already have a mileage of about 2 miles to the gallon or something.
Yeah. Stunning idea from Formula One, by the way.
Refueling absolutely needs to come back, because that would put a whole new spin on strategic variation.
And it might take away from the on-track racing product, because obviously it's another variable, another factor. People might be more in the pits and overtaking in the pits, but that's the only thing I can see that's a negative.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there should be the option that if you want to, you can build a car with a tank large enough to run a whole race, if you think it will work. But I just want to have the choice to do something different. That's what I want. Because Arrows did that. They had a car with a tiny little fuel tank, and so they would run really aggressive, but then they would have to pit like 10 times in a race or something.
As the thing is, look, it could work in a series where overtaking is easier. We don't have that. It's become rubbish right now. And if you and that's what will happen again. They'll start managing things. Everything has to be managed. Management has become the key word in Formula One right now. It makes things worse. Anyways, coming back to Hamilton Rosberg.
Yeah.
Fuck 2015. Let's go to 2016.
Okay, yeah.
2015 sucked.
All I'll say about 2015 is that Lewis got the title. Rosberg throws his hat at him, but then the final 3 rounds, Rosberg was on the high, winning those, and Lewis didn't care because I think because he was like, well, so
partying
what?
too much, basically.
I mean,
there are
I'm
actual
also
reports of him coming from the Caribbean on Thursday after a party, after a long weekend where
Yeah.
he's just partying and having fun.
But also, well, the thing is, why would he need to? There's no reason for him to push himself excessively because he's already wrapped up both titles. So why does he need to win them? You may as well let
Because that gave Rosberg the momentum into the next season.
Yeah, but I
which
think
was pivotal.
yeah, I mean the main important thing, for Rosberg, this was a train wreck because as we'd said before, Vettel was actually ahead of him for large parts of the season. I mean Vettel was still just about in touch of the title until the tire blowout in Spa. That really killed things. And then in Mexico, he crashed out by himself, but the title was already done by then. But Rosberg, this was a wake-up call because he was like, okay, I've been beaten 2 years in a row. I underperformed both times, especially the previous year. I really need to sort myself out. And yeah, he really hit the ground running in 2016. And Lewis took several races to get going, but that's the case almost every year with him.
Him and his craptacular starts that you said in a video once.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is so many. Everyone just laser focuses in on Malaysia, and it's like, in isolation, yes, that didn't help to lose 25 points like that. But at the same time, if you want to discount everyone's mechanical problems, you then have to start looking at mistakes, and that's when you realize that Lewis made so much more of them in 2016. Yeah. And really very costly ones in a year that he could have won it so easily, even without Malaysia, if he hadn't made those mistakes.
Yeah. Just again, one more thing, you might have Wikipedia in front of you. How many races Rosberg beat Lewis in a head-to-head battle?
In 2016?
Yeah. And this is going
Okay.
to surprise you.
Australia, Bahrain, yes. China.
Australia was ignore the bad starts. If you ignore the bad starts, because in Australia, Lewis had a bad start. And it was, I think, Vettel was in the lead, then Rosberg, then
no, but they got passed by both Ferraris at the start, and then the red flag was perfectly timed for Mercedes, and Kimi had a mechanical failure. Well, no, surely that would count as fair and square because that was Lewis's error to lose.
Yeah, that's what I do.
My point is in terms of outright performance. Lewis making errors and the reliability issues.
Okay, well,
exclude that.
Okay, if you want to exclude that, well, Russia, Rosberg had pole and fastest lap. Lewis was second. Although actually, didn't Lewis have to start 10th for that? I think he had an engine penalty.
Yeah. Yes.
That's
true.
Does Baku count because Lewis crashed in qualifying and started
Baku
10th
counts.
and finished 5th?
Baku counts because it was Lewis making a mistake. Plus, in the race, he didn't really have the kind of speed.
Spa, Lewis had to start at the back because they turned his car inside out. Monza, Lewis fucked up the start again. I don't know if that counts. Singapore, Rosberg won from pole. Lewis was third. I think he qualified third as well. So that counts. Japan, he fucked up the start again. Oh, no. Actually, no, Rosberg had pole. That was the one where the gloves, taking the threads off the fibers off his gloves, saved the weight. And he got pole by
but also Lewis had a poor start, right? He fell back
he was already behind him. But also he started second. Rosberg started on pole.
Yeah.
So maybe only those, to be honest.
Exactly my point.
But the thing is, the other ones where he has beaten, those are all Lewis making mistakes.
Yeah, exactly my point. It is Lewis losing a championship instead of Rosberg winning it, and that's the entire. If you want to summarize the Nico Rosberg versus Lewis Hamilton battle, it comes down to one very simple thing. Lewis fucked things up for himself instead of Rosberg being comprehensively beating. And people have this idea of looking back at this rivalry and even Rosberg with tinted glasses. The point was, a lot of it was Lewis's doing. Having multiple races where he's either making a mistake at the start. I mean, it became such a trend that his starts were poor. That cost him a lot. Then it was just a lack of consistency where either one thing went wrong or the other. And you compile all of that in it was 20 race season, 2021 race season?
21.
Yeah. And then you end up losing. That's the whole thing. 2015 is what every season should have been for these two.
But 2016, I mean, the stats were really in Lewis's favor because he got 10 wins to Rosberg's 9. Lewis got, I think, 11 poles to Rosberg's 8 as well. So that it really was the mistakes. It just took him a long time to get going because, I mean, those first 4 races were just a mixture of unfortunate, but also him just driving badly. Spa, Spain. Rosberg was annoyed because he was on course to get 8 consecutive wins. Across 2 seasons.
Who do you think wasn't fault in Spain?
Wasn't it something that Rosberg he selected the wrong engine mapping?
Yeah.
And lost a lot of speed off of that.
Yeah.
But then Lewis was coming up. There wasn't. I mean, he was defending. There wasn't much of a room to. I mean, I think
it was a racing incident. They both could have done a lot more to avoid it.
Yeah. I think that. And not one on the other. There's both. Yeah, with that one. But I remember that happening, and I was like, finally, we have our first race in 2 years. No Mercedes. Let's fucking go. And then
Max wins it. Yeah.
But some of them, I mean, looking at Lewis's wins, Monaco, he won from pole, but that was the one where, Red Bull fucked up the pit stop. But I guess you can argue that compensates for the year before. But
also by the way, just something similar. Lewis overshooting a corner, coming onto the track and getting away with it, while Verstappen doing the same thing 3 years later in Canada 2019 and being penalized for it.
That's all.
Pretty much. I think identical incidents, different rules.
I mean, half the rule changes we've had in the past 5 years have been because of Max. They bring in all this stuff because of him, and I always found it funny that they've decided no more under 18s in F1, and they've done that because the last under 18 has become the most successful driver of the modern era.
And then they turn back on themselves anyway by saying that if you're 17 and you've shown you're good, you can now do it. Apparently, like Kimi Antonelli.
I mean, Kimi Antonelli just turned 18, so he gets in there. Monaco was, if you want to call it, a free win, but then he had a win taken away the year before, so it's balance, I suppose. Canada, they lost the lead to Vettel at the start, but then they were just faster. But Rosberg had a puncture, so he dropped out of the podium because of that. Lewis sucked in Baku. Baku was one of his weakest circuits if you look at his record in general. Austria, there was the collision on the last lap. And that
was one where Rosberg just didn't turn into the corner.
Basically, yeah.
Something like that, yes.
I think he didn't turn in, and then he ran wide himself, and then when rejoining the track, he basically hit Lewis and took his wing off.
And funnily, it was only Rosberg's car that got damaged.
Again, Lewis got nothing, and Rosberg loses his front wing and finishes 4th.
Yeah.
Lewis didn't even get a puncture from an impact that took Rosberg's wing off. Why won't that car just break? Silverstone, Rosberg had gearbox. He had a penalty, actually. He got a time penalty and finished behind Max in that one. But Silverstone is Lewis's home hunting ground. Hungary, he won fair and square. Germany, Rosberg had.
I think even Silverstone, he got lucky, right? The timing of the pit stop when it rained. Because Rosberg was right on his ass at the time.
Is that the one where Williams led at the start?
Or was that 15? Wait. You're right. It was 2015, the one that I'm talking about. You're right.
15, it rained near the end, didn't it? And he had the mechanical ones. 2016, there was a penalty. I've forgotten why, but it was a 5-second penalty, and it meant he finished behind Max Rosberg.
But even the overtake from Max on Rosberg early in the race, in the wet.
Then Hungary, it was a pole for Rosberg, but Hamilton at the lead and start and won fair and square. And then Germany, Rosberg had a crap start and finished 4th, and I think got a penalty again, and Hamilton won that one.
I don't remember what happened in Germany.
But it did swing after that because Hamilton had to come from the back in Spa. He fucked up the start in Monza. Rosberg was just better in Singapore, and then Malaysia. Well, both of them had misfortune. It's just that Hamilton's was much bigger.
Yeah,
that would have been. Yeah, without the collision with Vettel at the start, I mean, that would have been a free win for thing, and it would have meant that. I mean, the championship would have been almost done going in the final round, because he would have been another 10 points further ahead. So he would have needed to finish well, basically outside of the points, with Lewis winning for Lewis to still take the title. But then those after Japan, his last win, but then Lewis did switch on for the final 4 rounds, but it just wasn't enough. He won from pole each time, but then Rosberg was second each time.
It was, I think overall, again, I actually did a video on the whole thing where it was, did Lewis win the title or no, did Rosberg win the title or did Lewis lose it ultimately? I think ultimately you end up on the side of Lewis's mistakes and everything costing him. And I think if you look back at this rivalry, it's ideally it should not be a rivalry because in terms of pure performance, Lewis is miles ahead. It's just he fucks his own head. That's what actually screwed up everything for him throughout this time.
I mean, when people say, "Oh, Lewis should be a 10-time champion," it's like, yeah, whose fault is that? When you look at it, really.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say to Ciaron's point, you said that Lewis was miles ahead. I would agree with the sentiment that it was better overall, but I wouldn't say he was miles ahead. Like, as my stats prove, again, nerd stats and all that sort of stuff, the gaps were very minimal. Like, up to like a 10th of a second in qualifying, up to about 5 seconds overall in the races.
Yeah.
Over a season, that is a very, like, there have been times where I've seen drivers within a second of each other, and that's about as close as you get over the course of a season. And it's a rivalry. This is what I said. This is a rivalry that never should have happened because Lewis Hamilton, as a thoroughbred world champion who's lamented as this messiah, this Jesus, shouldn't be going up against Nico Rosberg, who before he got in the most dominant car in recent memory was a guy who had won one race and was at best a midfield contender. Like, don't get me wrong, Rosberg stepped his game up and was definitely not just a random midfielder like Nico Hulkenberg or
Hey, don't you dare say that.
I mean,
no Hulkenberg slander.
I am a Hulkenberg defender. I did put a video on him. But
I can envision an alternate universe where he has 6 championships.
Yeah, me too.
Hulkenberg.
Yeah, actually, because if he'd have, because obviously he went to
If Lewis said no, Hulkenberg would have been in Mercedes.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'd love to live in that parallel universe.
And instead, we have the one where he still doesn't have a single bloody podium.
Yeah.
It needs to happen. I think when he announces his retirement, just let Mercedes or Ferrari or whoever just put him in the car and let him get that podium, and then he'll crash at the start.
Yeah.
Just let it happen.
He's had chances. My last video I did on my channel was about Hulkenberg and his quote unquote missed chances. But I think I mentioned 2012 Spa, where he was only like 2 seconds off a podium in a Force India. I mentioned Brazil, where he
would have won.
That was self-inflicted.
That fucking overtake.
This is an unpopular opinion I have. The back markers were on the racing line, and they should have got out of the way.
Yeah,
and that wasn't his fault.
Me too. I felt the same thing because they should not have been there. But again, it's still.
Would that have cost Vettel the title if he had won? No, it would have taken more. It would have taken more points off Nando. Yeah.
And then I thought of there's a couple of races where he finished 4th, like Korea 2013, but he wasn't anywhere near a podium. There was 2016 Monaco where he got put on the wrong strategy. 2016 Spa where again he was right up the front.
Germany 2018, he was 4th in a Renault, I think.
Germany 2019, and then he went ice.
That was the year. That was the year after. In 2018, I think he was 4th. If I'm not
was
wrong.
he? I didn't know that.
Maybe.
I don't remember that one. But yeah, if obviously if he stays on for if Audi get good, then he deserves at least a podium. But
man, by the time Audi gets good, Hulkenberg would be Alonso's age. I mean that car is not getting good. Whatever I've seen from that, the way Audi has gone about it, it's pathetic. Honestly, it's pathetic. They should. Andreas Seidel was the right man. They didn't give him the power. They didn't give him the authority. They didn't give him the money, and they fucked up. Now they have Harry Potter and basically Horner's minion. They're heading the team, and you can just see where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And they don't have a second driver.
And
I thought-
no one wants to drive for them as well.
Yeah, people are saying
Yeah.
Mick Schumacher and Sebastian Vettel, both of which are never going to happen.
Although apparently Mick is in the mix again.
Mick
That's
I
what-
might.
Mick Schumacher is.
The latest thing is he's in the mix, but Colapinto's out, something like that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Mick Schumacher had 2 seasons to prove himself in F1, and he didn't. End of.
No, I don't mind Mick coming back, but I don't think he's going to come back in a team that is led by Binotto, who was instrumental in basically Ferrari ending any ties with the Schumacher family.
Well, the thing is, wouldn't he? You would think he would come back with Alpine because he does their WEC division.
Yeah.
So that would be but then with. That's not
Yeah,
going to. Gasly will be there for a while, and Doohan just got the seat. I mean,
I
we'll
mean,
see
if
how
we're-
he
if we're
does.
under
I
shit in
doubt-
24,
I
I'm
doubt
sorry,
Gasly will be there for a while because look, 2025 is going to be shit for Alpine again, without a doubt. Because first of all, the power unit is almost 50 k's down at this stage, so it's not going to get better. And Gasly is not famous for his composure, anyways. So you have to take that into consideration. He is going to look for and I think he's. Why has he not done that this season is a big surprise. I think Gasly should have looked elsewhere, not
Then
stay at
there weren't really
Alpine.
many good seats open, really.
I think also he
Keep
probably
that
looked
open,
at the past like 5 decades and thought, I'm mid, I'm French, Alpine are mid and French, so I have to stay with them for my whole career. And I've got my
Yeah.
one win. Just like
That's
Parnis
more than
and-
what
yeah.
a lot of French achieve actually these days. So
Yeah. Back to Mercedes. So across those 3 years, Rosberg obviously did close the gap because in 2014 it was a big gap, but the car was so fast that you didn't see it so much. But the Mercedes didn't have quite the advantage in 15 and 16. But 16 was the year he really squared up, and it was more that he squared up, but it took everything he had because as everyone has said for all the time, he was doing sports counseling. He shaved paint off his helmet. He took fibers off his gloves. He stopped cycling to save weight in his legs. He stopped sleeping in the same bed as his wife. He did all of this stuff to try and so he could do this, and he still just won it in a
Yeah.
year when Hamilton was being dog shit half the time.
Yeah.
But
It's-
the little epilogue.
it's
is
not a
that-
rivalry. The point is it's not a rivalry. It's one driver being pathetic in his performance and still being better than the other driver. So you can make of it what you want.
Yeah,
So basically,
I mean, obviously,
what we've done is spent 2 hours on this and disprove the title of the video, which is we talk about the rivalry between Lewis and Nico, but there's no rivalry.
I mean, well, yeah. I mean, the rivalry in the sense that they went from being besties to really not getting on now, because now the epilogue to this was that 5 days afterwards, Rosberg announces his immediate retirement, which
Yeah.
doesn't happen very often. I mean, the last champion to do that was Mike Hawthorne.
Oh Jesus!
And
That's
Prost.
not right.
Yeah, Prost.
But
Immediate
Prost had
retirement.
already told, right? Prost was quite
yeah.
adamant that he was going to retire.
I
anyways.
think Prost had already announced his retirement before.
And also,
I think he was like, I'm just doing this for a year because I need a good fucking car so I can beat Senna. And
Yeah.
and yeah.
and also,
next year Senna was
Hawthorne
coming
retired
in
for
with-
medical reasons. He didn't retire because he wanted to. He retired because he was having medical problems.
What
Prost?
medical problems?
That's
You
the
know,
first
you know
time
how
I-
he died because he had blackouts on the whatever motorway. Or I think it was on the A1. He had that. That was part of the reason he retired because he had medical problems that were going to eventually lead to his death.
Oh, wait, you're talking about Hawthorne.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you meant
Oh,
Prost. I was like, when was Prost
yeah.
having blackouts? And I was thinking, what medical problems does Prost have other than a crooked nose? Like, no. He had Hawthorne. He actually had a terminal kidney disease,
Oh, okay.
and so I think he apparently he would have been dead within 5 years anyway, of his retirement. So he wasn't in a good place. So he was the last one that was like won the championship, and it's like, okay, see ya. But we already knew with Prost he was going to go. But
I think that was the biggest fuck you from Rosberg to Lewis, honestly.
when
Going out on a high and basically saying that you can't beat me again.
the responses were quite interesting actually when he did that in the UK, because a lot of people took it as cowardice, that they were like, he knows he can't beat him again, so he's quitting now while he's ahead. And to be honest, there's no shame in ending on a high, because I mean, not everyone wants to win a million titles.
Yeah.
One is enough. You end as a champion. You never have to defend it. I mean, like Scheckter, I think before 1980 he'd already decided that was his final year, but his contract he had to see it out. But once he got the title, he didn't want to carry on, really. And that year was dog shit.
And he was dog shit. Yeah. I agree.
There were definitely things of he's doing this because he knows that he'll never beat him again because he needs everything that happened to Lewis to happen again for him to do it. But I guess maybe uncertainty because we were going into new regulations for 2017 with cars that were going to be much more physical. In hindsight, because at the time a lot of people were just like, he's just kind of average and just got lucky with the car and everything that was happening to Lewis. But then when Bottas replaced him, I think Bottas replacing him was one of the biggest compliments he could give him because it made you realize actually how good Rosberg was.
Okay, let's do the experiment again. 2017, how many races Bottas beat Lewis on performance?
Russia.
Austria.
Russia. Russia and Austria. I mean, Lewis sucks in Austria, so I don't know if he had problems or what was going on there. Let's look at 2017. Russia he won, and Lewis was fourth. He beat him in Monaco. God knows what happened. I don't know what happened to Lewis in Monaco because he got knocked out in Q2.
That was that. I don't think there was anything wrong with the.
I think it was just again Monaco is one of Lewis's weakest circuits, even though he's won twice there. Canada, no. He beat him in Baku. Baku doesn't count because that race was a farce.
But I agree.
Hungary. Well, no, that was team orders. Hamilton.
Yeah, but he was ahead, right? But he was already ahead, and
I think Rod Bottas was on a faster thing, but Hamilton let him through right at the very end. I still don't entirely understand why, but I think it was just.
So what happened was, Seb had an issue with the car, the steering, and Kimi acted as a rear gunner. Bottas was third, Lewis was fourth. Lewis said that he can attack Kimi.
Oh yes, okay, yeah. Okay,
and that's how the whole thing panned out.
Let's say Bottas was better there then.
Yeah.
So but Russia and Hungary. He beat him. Brazil. Yeah, well, that one Hamilton crashed in Q1 and had to climb through. And Bottas got beaten to the win by Vettel from pole. Mexico was the punctures, that doesn't count. But then he did beat him in Abu Dhabi, but by that point, it's the last race of the year, no one cares. And it's Abu Dhabi.
So roughly how many? 4 to 5?
3 or 4, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. How many races did Rosberg beat on performance? How many times did he beat Lewis on performance?
No more than 4 or 5 a year, I guess. But that's only if you don't count Lewis's mistakes. But
so again, the point is Lewis made those mistakes.
Yeah, but at the same time, the gap between Bottas and Hamilton was a chasm compared to between Hamilton and
56
Rosberg.
Points in 58 points in 2017, which is
and Bottas had 3 wins and Lewis had 8, 9.
Yeah.
It just wasn't.
No. I'm not saying that Bottas is much better than what we perceive him to be. The point was Lewis by this time he also learned from his mistakes. By 26, what happened to Lewis was a lot of things were happening. Again, that's my theory, which might be 100% wrong. Until 2016, when he had Rosberg alongside him, he made a lot of mistakes because a lot of things was fucked around in his own head. That's where Lewis was screwing things up. Once Rosberg was gone, Lewis knew he was the de facto number 1. He knew that his fight was against Vettel. The errors, they were cut down. And then the races where Lewis didn't perform well, that remained the same. 3 to 4 in a year against Bottas, 3 to 4 in a year against Rosberg.
The other thing I need to point out is on issues of racecraft, because Bottas rarely had actual battles with Lewis, where even if he lost out most of the time, Rosberg would actually fight Lewis.
Yeah,
and Bottas almost never did that.
Yeah.
And another thing is the fact they selected Bottas at all. I've always been a proprietor that Pascal Wehrlein should have got that seat.
That would have been a much more interesting. That would have been much more fun.
I think Nico Hülkenberg in 2017 should have got that seat, and Bottas only got it because his manager was Toto Wolff.
Yeah, because of course Toto was still. I think at this point he was still on the board of directors for Williams. If you're ever wondering how Susie Wolff got that gig doing FP1 sessions for them,
Okay.
It's
Mercedes, by the way, Mercedes paid 10 million to Williams to actually get Bottas out of the Williams contract.
Mm,
So that's the extent to which Toto went. Why? Well, it's his fucking client. And
yeah.
that kind of this stuff infuriates me because I think Hulkenberg would have fared much better.
Mm.
And at
I
But
least would have
also,
got a
understand that.
podium
I
or
mean,
a win or any fucking thing at least.
because Wehrlein was an actual Mercedes junior, but he'd only done a year so far, and it was in a manner against Rio Haryanto and a very young Esteban Ocon, who was also Mercedes
I'd,
junior.
I'd
Bottas
say Ocon
had
was better. I'd say Ocon in the end, in the
yeah,
last
but
3 to 4
just
races, Ocon
too
got the hang of
inexperienced.
it.
You would never make a jump like that for someone
Yeah.
like him. But Bottas had at this point 4 very good years with Williams, and he'd been
Yeah.
very promising. He'd been very evenly matched with Massa, so it's like why not? And because this was unexpected, because at the time Rosberg was going to be carrying on. Had he carried on, Vettel would have 6 championships, but alas, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good times.
Hmm.
I
But it, yeah.
honestly, for me, this was the most infuriating part about the Mercedes dominance, where the thing is, you knew there was no way things could actually get better. Ferrari was always it's at its frustrating best, where you knew it was going to fuck up every fucking time. After what happened in again German Grand Prix 2018, everyone says Vettel made a mistake. He went straight on. Yeah, he did. But then the level of lack of teamwork at Ferrari, where he lost around 6 to 8 seconds to Lewis because he was stuck behind Kimi.
Yeah.
And basically Ferrari stood there, waited. I don't know what they were waiting for to actually issue the team order, and ultimately Kimi had to come in and say, "Should I let him through?" And then that was the level at which Ferrari was operating, and you're expected to win titles on that particular at that particular level of operation. It's not going to happen.
I mean, yeah, just to put my Ciaron hat on, at every race that year, Ferrari just forgot that Kimi existed, and they just left him out, and it's like, oh, he's been doing 50 laps on the hypersofts. Maybe we should bring him in.
Yeah,
It was just
That's
that's the thing. That's the thing. They had cars that were there was in terms of raw pace, there was very little in it between the Ferrari and the Mercedes in that year. Maybe the Ferrari had the slightest edge, but Lewis had effectively no obstacles to Vettel because he had a car that was more reliable and a team that had brains as well.
Yeah.
Even though they both had equally submissive, equally aloof and nonchalant Finnish teammates. Just Vettel had a million more obstacles and a car that was also not even built with his driving style in mind.
And by the way, the car that was, as the season progressed, continuing to get slower. In Austin, they removed upgrades worth 4 to 5 races, and the car went faster.
Again, it took them, and it took them 5 races to work this out that it was being slower. It's like if you actually put them all in FP1, oh shit, the car's slower, take them off. Great, problem solved. Just everything happens so slowly, like for the world's fastest sport. Yeah.
Oh god. Yeah.
But it did Rosberg retiring. It did change history a lot because of the circumstances afterwards. He's the same age as Lewis, so theoretically, if he wanted, he could have stayed. He could still be here today because now we're in the position where Lewis is still racing, and then after the races, he's being interviewed by Rosberg. So it's a
how do you think Rosberg would have fared if he stayed on?
Decently.
Yeah, I think decently. I mean, it would have been just as tense as ever. To be fair, it would have been fascinating.
Do you think it would have helped Vettel in the championship because Rosberg would have taken points off Lewis?
Yes, I mean that's my point about Vettel being a 6-time champion. He would have won the title in 17 and 18 because Rosberg and Hamilton would have taken points off one another.
Another interesting point. I heard I can't remember if it was actually true at the time, but apparently at the time, Rosberg was offered 100 million by one team to come back. I think it was Ferrari.
Bullshit. Absolute bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's Hamilton's Ferrari contract, isn't it?
Yeah,
now,
and that's now when they're making that kind of money and there's no budget cap and stuff like that.
I mean, I think back then the maximum salary was about 30 million that Lewis had, something 30 to 40 mil. I think Rosberg was on
35 something. Yeah,
I think Rosberg was on less than that.
I'll have to try and find where I found it. If it was
I mean, the only team that could have justified that kind of money would have been Ferrari.
Yeah. So the quote that I think you're referring to is Rosberg saying that he went away and there was a potential of him earning around $100 million. So what that means is in the next year, you do with the appearances, the documentaries, the books, whatever. You add all that up, it comes to that.
It could have
I
been
think that's what he was
over
talking
several
about.
years. It could have been like a 4-year contract, so 25
Yeah.
million a year, something like that.
Yeah.
I
Probably.
like the fact that he's one of the drivers who's obviously at peace with his decision because he's never made any. People have asked him, he's never had any interest in coming back.
Yeah.
He's kind of. It's funny because he's quite so. I think he said he would be curious to drive some of the modern cars, but then he also jokes he's like, seriously, 2 laps and my neck would be done if I tried to drive one of these ones
Yeah.
For
because
sure.
the fitness is gone. Yeah, but because there are so many drivers, they quit, but then they don't quit and they come back.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
I feel like if Lewis did that, he would come back. Vettel, I don't think Vettel's coming back. He's loving life, you know, being a hippie.
He's not coming back.
no,
I
no,
thought he would come back early in the season when he had these multiple interviews. But as soon as the season has progressed, I think
And
he's
also
become
Aston Martin
comfortable
were
with
good.
the.
As well. I think he did say he felt it was kind of, there was a bit of regret when he saw how good the Aston Martin was initially.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he would have been there with Stroll. It wouldn't have been the dream team of him and Alonso, which everyone would have wanted to see. Because again, Stroll is just holding the whole sport hostage at this point, not just Aston Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just hope we don't see a season where in 2026 where it's Lance Stroll fighting for the title. I mean that would be
it
it
can't
might happen.
All that's going to happen is you're going to have a very angry Alonso because they'll be sabotaging him to stop him taking the title off Stroll, and then someone else is going to win it because Stroll won't be able to win it, and he won't even care enough to try.
Yeah. I don't think he cares. I think we've reached a point where the interviews, whatever Lance does, he seems a bit too nonchalant. That doesn't work.
I mean, probably the scrutiny, but also the pressure from his father to live vicariously through him when he'd rather just play tennis, I guess, or something. He just doesn't. He turns into Schumacher for about 5 minutes per season and then fucks off for the rest of the time. He just doesn't care.
I think it's actually, again, if there is a case of Max moving to Aston Martin in the future, if that does happen, I mean, that's just that's a very bad position to be in because first you're paired with a Vettel, then you're paired with Alonso, who's ruthless with his teammates, and then you're paired with Max Verstappen. That's basically child abuse at this stage. if Lawrence is going to put in through all of that, who knows?
And before that, he got paired with Massa, so 3 champions and 1 pending champion.
Ideally a champion, right? 2008.
Did he? Is that lawsuit? Has he given up yet, or is that still going?
It's going on. It's going on.
God, it's like, please let it go. Like
But he's not getting the title, right? It's basically financial.
Even since the lawsuit started, it's gotten old. Ignoring the fact that he was 16 years too late, or when it began.
I think, but that's just how this whole thing is going. Ultimately, that it will be an out of court settlement, and he'll get paid a ton of money. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because look, it's an open shut case. Bernie is on record. If Bernie was not on record, it would not have been something on those lines. Unless Bernie says I'm 90 plus and I'm retarded. That's when he comes up and says that.
Yeah, I mean, because the only other person that knew was Max Mosley, and then he took this to the grave.
And Charlie Whiting.
And Charlie Whiting. Did Whiting know?
Yeah.
I thought it was just
the 3 of them.
Why would the
Whiting talked to Nelson Piquet. Then it was brought forward to Bernie, and Bernie told Max.
You mean after? For a second, I thought you meant Charlie Whiting was complicit in the planning.
No.
So why would the race director? No, he was obviously okay. He was told afterwards. Yeah.
So.
Whereas,
I mean, there is a way a race director could be involved. Because what if Flavio thought that Nelson Piquet Jr. was not even competent enough to crash at the right place and cause a safety car?
But the thing is, in the format, he spun at that same corner in the formation lap, so he was obviously doing his practice crash.
Yeah. I think it was hilarious in 2009 when Grosjean had almost a similar crash at the same point.
Oh yeah. I mean, Grosjean didn't need to practice to crash; he perfected it long ago.
Yeah.
Just
the Renault training school. That's what it is.
But and he still crashes just as much in IndyCar. Rosberg. Well, he's gone. He's now a pundit, so he interviews his old ex.
The best part of Sky Sports. The best part of Sky Sports is Nico Rosberg when he gets a chance to be in the commentary or just give his views, because
Yeah,
everyone else is so. Yeah, go for it.
yeah.
I'm about to say Martin Brundle and Jacques Villeneuve come close.
Oh yeah.
Martin Brundle does not, because there is actually a clip of it where they talk about. I think it's Slater, whatever, Chris Slater, Steve
Craig
Slater,
Slater.
Craig
Yeah.
Slater. So yeah, Craig Slater actually asked this question from Brundle and Nico Rosberg, that should Mercedes will Toto will be pursuing a Max Verstappen if a Kimi Antonelli is already signed, and Martin says no, there's no point in doing that because there's a George Russell already in the car and he's doing a decent enough job and he's much cheaper. And then there was Rosberg who said no, pay the bank and bring Max Verstappen on. If
Yeah.
Max Verstappen is available, bring him on. There's
Brundle
no
has
discussion on
moments,
this.
but overall, I think he is one of the more decent ones.
I mean, I get that.
Yeah, the bar
get
is
that-
very low.
I get that you can't have every pundit as a driver because you need someone that actually has broadcasting experience, and so they've got what's his face is the main guy one.
Lofty.
Not Crofty. Oh God. The other what Steve Lazenby is the like lead
Simon
pundit.
Lazenby, yeah.
Simon,
Like Simon, not Steve. Yeah,
We're doing an amazing
Lazenby.
job with the names right now.
Yeah, but like the others, I mean, Brundle is generally very good in terms of he knows what's going on. Extra, I mean, he hasn't been a racer for 25 years, but he knows what he's talking about and that. He's driven a lot of the more recent cars.
Yeah.
Chandok's analysis is very good, even though as a driver he was short and brief.
He's a nerd for stats. Like I remember him talking in Mexico free practice about the Australian drivers like Larry Perkins and Howden Gamble. I was like, who? I was like, yeah, you know these people. I thought I was the one who's supposed to know all these people.
Also, thank you to him for actually talking about the HRT in detail. Because whenever anyone goes on Beyond the Grid, it's like they're not allowed to talk about HRT. Every HRT driver except Sakon Yamamoto has been on Beyond the Grid, and all of them, they talk about HRT for about a minute, and then they're not allowed to discuss it anymore. And it's like, why just give me all the details I need to know? But
Clean been on there.
Cleon's been on, yeah. He was he said like Chandok, the car was actually not that bad. Like it handled well, it just didn't have downforce. Yeah, he was on it. But yeah, so then like Jolyon Palmer, rubbish driver, his Beyond the Grid interview was actually very good because he went into so much detail about stuff that you would have just ignored at the time because no one cared.
Do you think he's actually correct when he said that the whatever fuel pump or something that gave Hulkenberg half a second over him?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because he was told you're not allowed to tell anyone this was happening.
Yeah,
like,
but
how does a fuel pump give you half a second per lap?
Half a second per lap, and I don't think
without running out of fuel as well.
Yeah, and one of the more intriguing parts is he says that in the first half of the season, Hulkenberg was too far ahead, and then in the second half of the season, we were neck and neck. I remember watching that season, and I think it was a clean sweep in qualifying and mostly in the races as well.
Yeah, he scored points once in a race where 5 cars crashed at the start.
Yeah,
I can get my racing stats because I've done it for Jolyon Palmer, I think.
I mean, to be fair to him, you know, he won GP2, so he has to be at least half good. But
and beat
it was just
Van Doorn.
And beat Van Doorn, who annihilated everyone when he won it. But his analysis is usually relatively decent. Paul di Resta's no thanks. Damon Hill is annoying, actually. I mean, the
bias is too much. Honestly, the bias is too much. The nonsense at the start of the season where it became this whole thing about I think Carlos Sainz is the team leader at Ferrari. Like what season are we watching? What race are we watching? Are we basing things only on 2 races? And I think even again this season and almost every season Leclerc has shown that that's not the case. I don't understand this Carlos Sainz bias that is there with the entire commentary. Lawrence Barretto loves him for some reason. And even on Sky, there is a lot of this Carlos Sainz lobby that continues to go on. But yeah.
All I can think of, the closest thing we have to British bias is the fact that he used to work to drive for McLaren, used to live in the UK. I don't know. They are just obsessed with him. But yeah, he's a fossil anyway. I mean, the man hasn't retired. He gave up 25 years ago now. Yeah. But the others, Villeneuve is brilliant because he speaks his mind and he says what everyone is thinking, but just aren't allowed to say. Even though
Yeah.
it's easy, I mean, it was hilarious to me actually that when after he came for Ricardo in Canada, all you had were these Ricardo stands sharing like crash compilations from when he was at BAR and stuff like that, and all these people suddenly trying to go like offense archaeologists trying to go through his entire career looking for things in there, and that's
And the
like yeah,
same nonsense is going on, by the way, right now. And uh, look, there was a time when Lewis Hamilton had this barbaric group of fans. Now almost every driver has that. Max has it, Leclerc has it, and apparently, the whole penalty, the sanction that was given to Max for the foul language, was to Herbert, Johnny Herbert. And now there is a fan. What he's doing is he's he's created a compilation of Herbert doing stuff which are maybe not appropriate. He's shared a video of Johnny groping someone on Twitter.
There's this really old it was this like comedy skit that he did at Sauber in like in the late 90s with a bunch
he's
of
wearing
female
Sauber.
mechanics who were like caressing him and stuff and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's there. And
Yeah.
then there's the another of him, I don't know, working with a betting website. And I don't know, I mean, it's a hard look. Especially because
Yeah.
look, Herbert is, I mean, he's much older, so really why dig up such stuff?
Going back to the Villeneuve point, obviously you said they were showing crash compilations of him in F1. The ones of him in NASCAR were much more funny because you could see the progression of him racing like he was in F1 in NASCAR, and then in NASCAR he's just like, as soon as he realizes that everyone else barges everyone else out of the way, he's just like, well, I'm gonna do it 10 times worse. So literally, there's a clip of him at Montreal in 2007, I think it was. He goes wide like Alonso style in 2007, and literally comes back onto the racing line and takes out about 5 people on his way back onto the track. It's fucking hilarious.
One person I really would like to then have a pundit on is Montoya because he would he would be the same as
Blunt.
Villeneuve, but he can justify, you know, calling other drivers out because he was actually good most of the time.
Just bring back James Hunt from the grave.
Yeah. Oh, James Hunt's commentary again. This whole swearing thing is, and all I can say to that is bullshit. Like, it's just please more of that.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of obviously, I mean, everyone hates
I don't know
coffee,
which.
but, like,
There's this actually clip on YouTube where there's a crash in front of him and Hunt has the phone. He goes, "What an idiot! What was that?" and
Especially
there are
as
so many incidents of something
the
similar.
thing is, for him, obviously, if someone like Crofty or Alex Jakes was doing it, it's like, well, you're not drivers, you're just broadcasters. But when it's an ex-driver, they can get away with it. And also, when he was a former champion, he can definitely get away with calling people out. I would love that if we had Rosberg doing more of that when he was commentating.
Yeah, Hunt
He is so good on commentary.
Hunt was very underrated because people see him as, especially nowadays, see him as this arc back to a time where it was a womanizer and stuff like that. But people don't realize, because when people talk about like wokeness and stuff like that, they mention people like James Hunt and people like the Playboys from that era, Francois Sever, but they don't realize that James Hunt was actually one of the most woke people of his time. He was vehemently against apartheid, and he would donate to anti-apartheid causes. He was fantastic.
In South Africa, a lot.
Yeah, he just likes sex, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that Twitter account which is constantly sharing those. There was people like him and Depaye and others that did like nude photo shoots with well, they weren't nude, but the women were naked that did photo shoots with them in the 70s and 80s, like completely full frontal. But yeah, good luck trying to get the drive. Well, I'm sure the drivers would want to do that, but I don't think they'd be allowed to do those kind of photo shoots these days.
Look, Daniel Ricciardo appeared on one podcast where he was asked, does he? I mean, he was asked to compare between European women and American women, something on those lines. It was an American podcast, and the man could not stop laughing and could not utter a single word because he knew if he said anything, it would be taken out of context and completely he'll get hammered. And that's the big problem, because the thing is, the vibe of the entire pod, it's from Tom Segura, who's a comedian in the American circuit. So he had this podcast where Daniel was brought in, and that was his first and final appearance because he knew the kind of PR that is there in F1. You just can't do that.
Yeah.
I remember back in like the early 2010s, they asked all the drivers in like interviews, blondes or brunettes, that kind of stuff.
There were the pole
Boobs
position
or
motorsport, boobs or bums. That was an interview thing that they used to do with drivers, and that was only about 10 years ago as well.
Yeah.
And then there was a couple of things you used to get comments on the grid. Weber and other drivers talking about the grid girls as well.
I need to bring those back because they brought them back from Monaco 2018, and because obviously people said it's sexist, you can't do that. So they brought in grid boys as well.
Remember Vettel protesting against the ban on grid girls, and now he won't even utter a word because grid girls are gone.
When it first happened, I was thinking nothing screams feminism more than putting women out of a job, like by banning them. Because the thing is that the people that were most upset about this were the grid girls themselves.
Yeah.
Because I love this.
A very lucrative gig. And that's gone.
And it's easy work. You just have to stand there and smile and hold the thing up. Like it's
They don't want to be seen to be objectifying women. If they did like what they did at Monaco in 2018 and put men there too, you can't say that.
I think I think it was Valencia 08 or 09. It was just grid boys or something. And I was like, well, if Ralph was on the grid, maybe that would work. But otherwise, this is kind of missing the point a bit.
Female audience. We have a much bigger female audience now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember actually.
I mean, the kind of objectification that goes. I think I should share one thing with you guys.
Oh, God.
Just take a look.
Oh, because... God, getting cancelled.
Yeah. Because, this is one thing which I have sent to everyone because it traumatized me. And I don't want to be the only one that's traumatized.
It is actually.
Oh God!
I do remember from watching. I watched the United States Grand Prix in 2007 live, and Martin was doing his grid walk, and he actually approached one of the grid girls and asked, "He's like, so what do you do then?" And she's like, "Well, we stand here and we give the guys something to look at." And he was like, "Okay, I'll let you carry on with that." And I was like, "Okay, well at least she's not subtle,
Yeah.
Oh God!
That's just American women in general, though.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There is that clip. There was a grid girl. I think it was a touring car race where she fainted and fell onto the car. And the driver was like, "Is the car okay?"
Yeah. What was I going to say? Yeah.
Finally, I found it. It's there in the chat. And
oh God. What, in producer notes?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh yeah. I've seen that. Con, you might want to put that in the edits so everyone else can have to see that.
Okay.
I've seen those on like reels and stuff like that from content creators.
Interesting.
But Ricardo of all people, he's fucking balding.
And this was only a month ago as well. Jesus.
Wait a minute. Clean shave.
Why does this person have 5,000 followers? God, I can't stand F1 Twitter. Like all the big accounts are the bloody fan accounts.
Oh God, what's Colin going to say?
And the dumb ones.
I know we're still recording comments.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Guys, we're still recording.
Yeah, we never ended. I've been trying to drag it back to Rosberg, but now we're talking about drivers' dick sizes apparently.
Yeah. Young. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Rosberg when he was young was pretty fit.
Okay.
Him and Hulkenberg, the blonde Germans.
Yeah. I mean, nobody has ever looked more German than Hulkenberg. In the history of Germany, including that period in the 20th century. Yeah,
completely.
The period we don't talk about.
Yeah.
With the, we do in my podcast. We do. We'll have you on it. So we'll actually bring you back, Peter, as well. We'll have the whole unpopular opinion thing again. Okay. That was fun. That was one fun podcast.
Yeah. Actually, in 1939 to 1945, Germany was amazing.
Well, in conclusion, since I mentioned it at the very beginning, Hamilton, Rosberg, Prost, Senna, it was not. It would only be Prost, Senna if Prost was, pretty useless, I guess, and just kind of half-hearted.
Maybe he was Jack Lafitte instead.
Yeah, but either way, Rosberg, it's a compliment to himself and to Lewis in that he had to work. He was incredibly disciplined and diligent in his fight to beat Lewis, and the amount of effort it took still for him to only just beat Lewis. So it's a compliment to both drivers, really. But yeah, Rosberg's gone, and Hamilton's still kicking about. Yeah.
Even if he's a bit shit.
Maybe he should have quit too. That would have been funny. Can you imagine that if he we're not going to keep going on, but if Hamilton retired as well in 2016, so then you have two vacant seats at Mercedes.
Verline and Hulkenberg, that'd be a great one.
Go for it.
Yeah, Wehrlein, Hulkenberg, why not? And then Vettel. Well, that's two easy titles for Vettel. And then 2019, that's probably Ferrari. Maybe Leclerc gets it with their illegal engine. I don't know.
Oh, that'd be controversial.
And then it's the Max show. But let's
let's end it there.
Yeah. That's a whole other episode of did Lewis retire? Should Lewis have retired whenever? But yeah. Okay. Well. You've been listening to the DRS Train podcast. We're on YouTube and Spotify, and you can find us on X and Instagram at the DRS Train podcast. Make sure to tune in for our next episode. Stay safe, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That's how dominant that fucking car was. And yeah, I actually got into an argument with Baxty, that's the person's name. He actually he's a Lewis Hamilton fan. So he said that he was just criticizing Vettel about something, and he said that Vettel has not won any race beyond top 3 or top 4. And yeah, I got into an argument the whole thing.
I mean, my argument has always been, well, you don't need to when you're bitching in qualifying. Like, because people in his Red Bull days were, we can't overtake. It's like there's no one to overtake because he's always
he can't overtake. Abu Dhabi 2012 stuff.
It's
like that.
I know. God, I was having to defend him against British fanboys constantly, like 10, 15 years ago. And it's like, how many examples do you want of races where he can actually overtake and carve his way through the field? But they'll always go, oh yeah, but Turkey 2010 or Belgium 2010 or something.
Or Fugio 8. Every driver makes mistakes. Lewis has had those moments as well.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis's calling card is, tailgating people and punting them off while he gets to canoe. Because as well as his car's never breaking down, they're fucking impenetrable. Don't even brake in collisions.
Lewis's record gets so much inflated because of his stint at Mercedes, and actually pointed that out because he said that Lewis has wins from so far back, and I simply pointed out the fact that until 2014, Lewis had not won a race beyond top 3. Yeah, his worst starting position was P3, from which he had won a race, and the first time he did win was when he fucked up in qualifying in Silverstone 2014. He made a mess. He didn't really do the final lap. He started in P8, P9. And then he won because first the car was a rocket ship, and then I think Nico suffered
Rosberg's car broke down. So when your car is 3 seconds a lap faster than everyone else, no wonder he won.
Yeah, and the same like in qualifying, basically.
Germany 2018, he shouldn't have won that race anyway because he got that. He never got penalised for crossing the bollard for the pit entrance. For that. He never got a penalty for that from starting from P14 or whatever.
I think the funniest fact with Lewis's racecraft, going back to that, is the fact that he's the only driver that's had multiple instances of Pastor Maldonado, and both of them weren't Maldonado's fault.
Bar 2011, Valencia 2012,
I thought
Monaco, the red flag inducing one.
Yeah.
Monaco, 2011.
Yeah.
That crash is just funny. Yeah. Because I think they're trying to get around Satil. They're trying to lap Satil, aren't they? And he crashes on his own, and it causes everyone behind him to crash. It's such a low speed.
I think that race Lewis should have been black flagged. The way he was driving that race, multiple collisions with Massa.
He hit Massa at the hairpin as well.
Yeah,
that was. I mean, 2011 was a miserable year.
I've always said that Lewis Hamilton in his McLaren was just as bad a racecraft driver as Max was in 2018, if not worse.
No, worse, much worse. Yeah. Lewis was at Romain Grosjean's level in 2012. That was the kind of shit that he was doing. Yeah, the number of collisions with Felipe throughout that season. Like, what was going on? I mean, that's what they did. They knew they were neither Massa, neither Hamilton were fighting for the title. So what they were doing was they were just crashing into each other whenever they came across. And then he came across each other every race.
He crashed into Kobayashi as well, Spa. He blamed him, and then he watched the replay. I was like, actually, that was my fault.
Yeah.
2010, he could have won the title very easily, but then 2 races in a row, he crashes out with Webber in Singapore and then into Massa again on the first lap in Monza.
Yeah.
Without those two, he would have won the championship.
And that's the funny thing. They talk about how Ferrari should have won the title in 17 and 18, and they call that a title contending car, but not the McLaren 2010.
Yeah,
He was in
Because
contention in the last
it was
race.
the Red Bull was much faster than everyone else, but it broke down all the time. So that was what kept Ferrari and McLaren in
And
the
also
game.
they had two drivers fighting for the title. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think Vettel's 2011 season was basically 2010 season without the reliability issues.
And without Webber fighting him constantly.
yeah. I mean, Vettel in 2011 was supreme. I mean, the only dodgy race he had that year was the Nürburgring, because he just didn't qualify well and he had a couple of spins in the race.
Yeah.
And that race was won by Lewis, I think. But otherwise, he was basically
Canada as well.
Canada.
He should have
He
won.
fucked up at the end. Abu Dhabi wasn't his fault. That would have been a win without that puncture.
Yeah.
Every other race, he was basically on it.
Smashing everyone. He had 15 poles in 18 races in that season.
I think the first non Red Bull pole came in Korea when he'd already won the championship, and that was Lewis.
Or was that Lewis?
No, that was Lewis, and then Vettel took the lead immediately and won the race.
Yeah.
He just could. I think it was Brazil. I think they said he had gearbox problems, and Webber won that race, but maybe he just gave it up to him. China, he got beaten by Lewis. They did a better strategy. This is the early days of Pirelli. Got him in the final stint. But he almost every other race he won.
The era of 4 pit stops.
Yes.
As we should have a few races where that kind of thing happens. At least 3 or 4 races in a 24 race calendar where you have 3 to 4 pit stops. Mixes things up.
Because these days,
I just think we need more uniqueness.
I mean, everyone complains till the cows come home about tires, but now the tires are. I want the tires to work, but they're kind of. I don't like that they're working, because what I want is basically like early 2000s where you actually have to push all the time. Whereas at the moment, the tires work and people can run long stints by constantly tire saving.
That's the thing. We had a cliff earlier in 2012. Now the problem is they just overheat and then you just pull back and then they continue to give decent performance. They're not really falling off the cliff. And that was one of the biggest issues with the car, with the tires at the time, and probably made things a bit interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, 2013 was abysmal. When you had in the first race, people were pitting 5 laps in.
Yeah,
and you see, because even the games got it down. F1 2013, the tires are abominably bad in that as well.
Well, that is a goated game, the best Codemasters F1 game.
I don't like that one. I mean, I like from the older ones. I mean, I like 2012 because it's 2012. But those games, they only work if you install the mod that makes the AI actually good. Because otherwise, they are utterly incapable of overtaking.
I didn't know there was a mod for AI. I might have to download that.
Yeah, there is one, and what it helps. I have it for 2012. It doesn't improve their racecraft much. They're still utterly incapable of overtaking you. But what it does mean is they make mistakes and they actually break down, because otherwise you have races where you're running around at an HRT in 20 seconds, and it's like, I've got 90 minutes of this. Nothing is going to happen for the rest of the race because there won't be any crashes, no retirements, no safety cars. Whereas in this one, you'll have at least half a dozen people break down. I mean, there are a couple of races it takes it a bit much. I think I did a race at Valencia once and 3 people finished it. So it takes it a bit too far. But
there are some moments like that.
I mean, the more recent games have this. The AI are far better in terms of behavior. They race much more competitively, and they can overtake you. They still never break down, though. But to be fair, in real life, they don't break down.
That's
although you can break down in modern F1 games, I don't like.
I kind of like that, but don't, because I think it's because you have the option to just pretend that didn't happen. Because with F1 Championship Edition, which I played that game to death before like F1 2010 came out, there are no flashbacks in that. So if you're doing a full length race, if you crash out, that's it, you're done. Or if the engine goes, you can't do it again. Like you just have to accept it. And that really does help with the engagement, but it's having the option to have flashbacks and everything that takes that level of immersion away, because it's always take that option. Yeah.
By the way, should we start?
Probably.
Producer notes. I've been recording for the past 6 minutes. Just keep going, having lunch. When you want to start, let me know. I'll stop the recording and restart.
Okay, well, I don't...
Okay.